Imagine lying in bed at night, eyes open, tired, but unable to sleep. Your body is still, but your mind is racing, thinking about what happened today, worrying about what might happen tomorrow. You try to relax, but your chest feels heavy, your thoughts won't stop, and peace feels far away. Sound familiar? Now imagine something different. Imagine closing your eyes at night and feeling calm, centered, and completely safe, like your mind is a still lake, untouched by the winds of stress or regret. You drift into sleep with ease, and when morning comes, you feel light, rested, and emotionally balanced. Tell me honestly, how many nights have you spent fighting your own thoughts, your emotions, your restlessness? The truth is, most of us try to fall asleep while carrying the weight of the entire day, and sometimes the entire past. But you can't rest if your heart is full of anger, your mind is full of noise, and your body is holding on to tension like it's preparing for war. That's where Buddhism steps in, not with magic, not with empty promises, but with real, timeless tools that have helped people find peace for over 2,500 years. In this video, you're going to discover the Buddhist lessons that will transform the way you sleep and feel. We're talking about deep, emotional healing that starts before your head hits the pillow and lasts long after you wake up. This is not just about better sleep. This is about releasing what no longer serves you. It's about ending the day, not in chaos, but in clarity. And it's about building a nightly ritual so strong that it becomes your secret weapon for inner peace. So, before we start, I want you to make a decision. Write this in the comments. Tonight, I choose peace. I am mindful. You're not just typing a sentence. You're declaring something powerful. You're reminding yourself that your emotions don't control you. You observe them, learn from them, and then let them go. So take a deep breath, settle in, and get ready, because after this, your nights will never be the same again. Sometimes, when the world quiets down and you're finally alone with your thoughts, that's when the real noise begins. You turn off the lights, lay your head on the pillow, and suddenly your mind is not ready to sleep. It starts racing, thinking about that thing you said at work, the goal you didn't reach, the person who didn't respond, the way someone looked at you. You try to brush it off. You tell yourself to relax, but deep down, something is stirring, something heavy, something restless. That's not just random overthinking, it's the 8 worldly winds: gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disgrace, pleasure and pain. These are the invisible forces that push and pull at our emotions every single day. And the truth is, they don't just affect us during daylight hours. They follow us into the night. They sneak into our beds and whisper stories into our ears while we try to fall asleep. And unless we see them clearly and know how to release them, they will continue to disturb our rest over and over again. Let's start with gain and loss. On the surface, these seem obvious. We like gaining: money, success, security, love. We fear losing: relationships, opportunities, status, health. But the real problem is deeper. We don't just feel pleasure when we gain. We build our identity around it. We chase it. We tell ourselves, when I get this, then I'll be happy. And then, when something is lost, an opportunity slips away, a financial mistake happens, someone walks out of our lives, it shakes us like an earthquake. It's not the event itself that ruins our sleep. It's the mental clinging, the loop of, why did this happen? What could I have done differently? Will I ever get it back? The attachment to gain makes the mind overactive. Even good fortune becomes a source of stress. Have you ever laid awake thinking about something going right, but you're afraid it won't last? That's gain turning into anxiety. And the fear of loss keeps you alert, watching your life like a guard, afraid to fall asleep on duty. The way out isn't to stop caring, it's to change the relationship. Buddhism teaches us to hold gains lightly, to see them as temporary visitors, not owners of our peace. When you can accept that all things come and go, money, approval, even health, you stop gripping them so tightly. That loosening is what allows the body and mind to finally relax. Now let's talk about praise and blame. If you've ever replayed a compliment in your head over and over, or if someone's criticism ruined your entire week, you've been under the influence of these winds. Praise can be intoxicating. It makes us feel seen, valued, worthy. But once we start craving it, we fall into a dangerous trap. Our peace becomes dependent on other people's opinions. And blame, it cuts deeper than we admit. We start questioning ourselves, our choices, our worth. Even when the world has gone quiet, our inner critic speaks loud. What many don't realize is that both praise and blame are just reflections. They tell us more about the speaker than the one being spoken about. One person praises you, another criticizes you for the same action. So, what's the truth? The truth is neither. The truth is, you are not those words. And when you stop letting your self-worth be measured by them, your mind finds freedom. When you detach from the highs of praise, you become less afraid of the lows of blame. And in the silence of night, that matters. Because many people don't sleep, not because they're in danger, but because their identity feels like it's under attack. Maybe someone misunderstood you. Maybe you weren't able to explain yourself. Maybe someone thinks less of you. And your brain keeps spinning it like a broken record. This is where mindfulness comes in, not just as a meditation buzzword, but as a real practice of seeing, this is blame. It's painful, yes, but it's not the end of me. And that clarity becomes the doorway to emotional rest. Fame and disgrace often seem like concerns for celebrities or public figures, but in truth, they touch us all. Fame doesn't have to mean being in the newspapers. It can be as simple as being liked on social media, admired at work, or respected in your friend group. And disgrace doesn't have to mean a scandal. It could be feeling embarrassed after a mistake, being left out of a conversation, or having someone gossip about you. The real issue here is our desire to be seen a certain way. We build a version of ourselves we want others to believe in, and we protect it like a fortress. But here's the problem. The more energy we use maintaining this image, the more anxious we become. We wonder, what do people think of me? Did I sound stupid? Will they still like me? These questions don't vanish when you close your eyes at night. They get louder, and that's why so many people lie in bed feeling exposed, even when nothing's actually happening. When you can see fame and disgrace as just more weather, blowing through your life like wind through trees, something incredible happens. You stop trying so hard, you stop performing, and your nervous system begins to settle. You no longer feel the need to manage people's perceptions while trying to sleep. You just rest in who you are, as you are, without the armor. And then there's pleasure and pain, perhaps the most seductive and stubborn winds of them all. Pleasure seems harmless. We all want comfort, joy, nice things, good feelings. But when we cling to it, we suffer. Why? Because pleasure doesn't last. That beautiful evening, that perfect meal, that great conversation, they're gone, and we chase the next one. The mind becomes addicted to stimulation. It wants one more scroll, one more video, one more snack before bed. Not because we need it, but because we're afraid of the quiet. And pain? Pain is the teacher we avoid. Physical pain, yes, but emotional pain even more. A harsh word, an old wound, a moment of loneliness. These things settle in the body like heavy stones. When we don't process them during the day, they rise up at night. The body tightens, the breath shortens, and the heart becomes restless. True rest comes when we stop running, when we stop chasing pleasure like it's a cure and stop resisting pain like it's poison. Buddhism teaches equanimity, not being cold, but being steady, not needing every moment to feel good, and not collapsing when things hurt. This inner stability is what allows the body to release its armor and drop into sleep like a leaf floating to the ground. The 8 worldly winds are not enemies to fight. They're conditions to understand. They're like the changing weather, sun one day, rain the next. When we think they define us, we suffer. But when we see them clearly, we are free. And that freedom is the deepest kind of rest. So, how do we let them go? First, awareness. Most people don't even know these winds are affecting them. They feel restless, but don't know why. So the first step is naming them. Ah, this is fear of loss. This is craving for praise. That alone starts to untangle the tension. Second, presence. Most sleep disturbance comes not from the body, but from mental time travel. Regret about the past, worry about the future. When we bring the mind into the body, feeling the breath, sensing the bed beneath us, we interrupt the storm. Third, compassion. We don't heal by judging ourselves. We heal by meeting our wounds with kindness. When a painful memory comes up, instead of pushing it away, we can silently say, "It's okay. You're safe now. You don't need to carry this anymore." Fourth, letting go of control. Much of our sleep anxiety comes from trying to control life. But sleep itself is a surrender. You don't force it, you fall into it. The more we try to manage the winds, what people think, what might happen, what we might lose, the more exhausted we become. But the moment we soften, something shifts. The mind lets go. The heart opens, and sleep comes, not as an achievement, but as a gift. Finally, practice, not just once, but every night. Even 5 minutes of reflection on these winds can change everything. Ask yourself gently, where did I feel gain and loss today? Did I chase praise or avoid blame? Am I holding on to some image of myself that's keeping me tense? What am I afraid to lose? And then breathe. Let it all rise. Let it all fall. And go to sleep with nothing but the present moment in your hands. There's something deeply spiritual about sleep when it's approached with awareness. It's not just rest, it's renewal. And when you stop letting the 8 winds toss you around, you don't just sleep better, you live better. And so, as you prepare to continue this journey into deeper Buddhist teachings for emotional peace, know this: you've already taken the first and most powerful step. You've started to see what's really happening beneath the surface, and from this moment forward, each night can become not a battleground, but a sanctuary, not a place of struggle, but a return to wholeness. Because peace doesn't come from outside. It begins when the mind stops chasing and the heart learns to rest right where it is. Just as the mind begins to rest from the pull of the 8 worldly winds, something else starts to surface, quieter but no less powerful. Beneath the thoughts about gain and loss, beyond the stories of praise and blame, deeper even than the fear of pain or the hunger for pleasure, lies something more subtle: emotional residue. Little aches we didn't have time to feel fully, words we never said, anger that we pretended wasn't there. And even if we silence the mind, these things stay lodged in the heart. That's why sometimes the body is tired, the mind is calm, but sleep still won't come, because something in the emotional field is still unsettled. This is where loving kindness, or Metabana, becomes not just a spiritual practice, but a kind of emotional medicine. It's not about forcing yourself to feel something fake. It's about creating space where difficult emotions can dissolve naturally, without suppression, without overthinking, and without judgment. When done properly, metta becomes like a warm, gentle fire that melts away the frozen parts of the heart. And when that warmth spreads through you, sleep is no longer something you chase. It becomes the natural result of emotional balance. Metabana, in its essence, is the cultivation of goodwill. It starts with a simple wish. May I be happy, may I be safe, may I be at peace. It may sound simple, even soft, but don't let the simplicity fool you. This is one of the most powerful practices in the entire Buddhist tradition, especially when used before bed. Because what it does is clear the emotional clutter that builds up throughout the day. Think of all the small wounds we accumulate: someone's tone of voice, a critical comment, the tension in traffic, the guilt for not doing enough. Alone, they seem minor, but together they sit in the heart like stones, and no one can sleep peacefully with a heavy heart. Starting with yourself is not selfish. It's foundational. You can't offer true kindness to others when your own well-being is neglected. That's why metta always begins with the self, not with grand affirmations, but with real, grounded kindness. And here's the secret. If it feels awkward at first, you're doing it right. Many people struggle to wish themselves well, especially if they're used to self-criticism. But that's exactly why this matters. When you can sit quietly, hand over heart, and sincerely wish for your own peace, you are beginning the work of unlearning emotional self-rejection. You're creating a safer inner world, and that safety is what invites rest. After establishing kindness toward yourself, the practice moves outward. You extend it to someone you care about, a friend, a teacher, a family member. This part is easier, and that's intentional. It builds momentum. It softens the heart, and in that softness, the nervous system starts to slow down. Then you include someone neutral, someone you don't have strong feelings about. This trains the heart to see others not as objects, but as human beings worthy of peace, just like you. By now, the emotional body is loosening. You've started to shift from contraction to expansion. The real shift happens when you include someone difficult, someone who has hurt you, challenged you, misunderstood you. You don't need to justify their behavior. You don't need to fake forgiveness. You just offer the same simple wish. May you be happy. May you be free. It's not for them. It's for you, because when resentment stays in the system, it hardens your heart, even when you're not thinking about it. You carry that bitterness into bed. You close your eyes, and your body is still holding tension that belongs to yesterday. But metta lets you release it, not by denying the pain, but by refusing to add more hate to the world inside you. That release is the doorway to real emotional cleansing. The reason metta works so well before sleep is because it shifts the tone of your entire inner world. Most people go to bed with unresolved conflict, either with others or with themselves. This doesn't always show up as drama. Sometimes it's just a low-level irritation, a subtle guilt, a disappointment that wasn't named. These emotional fragments don't go away on their own. They wait for silence, and that silence often arrives just when you're trying to rest. That's why this practice is not a luxury. It's a necessity, like brushing your teeth, but for your heart. Another overlooked power of metta is how it rewires the nervous system. Neuroscience has started to catch up with what ancient monks already knew. When you repeat phrases of loving kindness, especially with intention, your brain shifts out of the fight or flight response. Cortisol drops, heart rate evens out, and perhaps most importantly, the body begins to feel safe again. Not because the world changed, but because your relationship to the world softened. This feeling of inner safety is exactly what the body needs to enter deep, restorative sleep. It's important to mention that metta is not about forcing away negative emotions. If sadness is present, you don't need to cover it with a smile. You just bring kindness to the sadness. You meet it like a friend. If anxiety is present, you let it be there, but you don't feed it with fear. You offer it space and compassion. Over time, these feelings shift. They lose their grip, not because you pushed them away, but because you didn't resist them. Metta transforms by inclusion, not exclusion. One of the best ways to do this practice at night is in bed, right before sleep. Lie down, place your hands over your chest, and begin silently. Start with yourself. Not the version of you that performed well today, but the version of you that struggled, the tired one, the insecure one, the one that didn't do everything perfectly. That's who needs kindness. Repeat slowly, "May I be happy. May I be free from inner and outer harm. May I sleep in peace." Then move to a loved one. "May you be happy. May you rest in ease." Then someone neutral. Then the difficult one. And finally, the whole world. Let it be simple. Let it be slow. No drama, no pressure, just pure intention. Over time, this becomes more than a bedtime ritual. It becomes a way of life. Because as you keep doing this, you start to notice something during the day. Less reactivity, more patience, a softer edge. Even when things go wrong, you recover faster. That's because metta isn't just healing emotional wounds, it's building emotional resilience. And resilience is what makes your peace unshakable. Another important part of this practice is tone. You don't need to chant the words like a robot. Let them land in your body. Feel them, even if only a little. It's not about perfect concentration. It's about emotional sincerity. Some nights, your heart will be closed. That's okay. Say the phrases anyway. Like watering a seed, even if it hasn't sprouted yet. The repetition is what builds the habit, and the habit is what reshapes the emotional landscape. There's also no need to feel loving right away. That's a common misunderstanding. You're not generating emotions. You're creating the conditions where those emotions can arise naturally. Think of it like a garden. You don't force flowers to grow. You tend the soil. You remove the weeds. You water it daily. And then one day, without even realizing it, you wake up and notice. Your inner world feels different, lighter, warmer, safer. One powerful extension of this practice is to include your younger self, the version of you that was vulnerable, confused, hurt, the child inside you who still remembers pain even if you've forgotten the details. Place a hand over your heart and speak to that version gently. You did your best. You are safe now. I will take care of you. This reparenting helps release emotions stored for years, and when those old wounds start to heal, you sleep not just deeply, but peacefully. Metta also works as a shield, not in the sense of building walls, but in strengthening emotional immunity. Life still throws difficult people and events your way, but they don't land as hard. Why? Because your heart is no longer raw. It's been nurtured, and a nurtured heart sleeps well. It doesn't need constant protection or validation. It trusts itself. That trust is what replaces fear, and when fear subsides, rest becomes natural. For those who deal with nighttime anxiety, Metta offers a direct antidote. Because anxiety often comes from fear of the unknown, the uncontrollable. But Metta redirects the mind from fear to care. Instead of, what if something goes wrong, the mind says, whatever happens, may I meet it with kindness. This shift may sound small, but it changes everything. It gives you agency. You stop being a victim of your emotions and start becoming a companion to them. You may notice that with regular practice, your dreams change too. They become lighter, less chaotic, less aggressive. That's because the emotional material you carry into sleep becomes softer. You're not stuffing pain down into the subconscious. You're releasing it beforehand, and the subconscious responds. It mirrors your emotional climate. When that climate is calm, dreams follow. Over time, Metta becomes more than a practice. It becomes a way of seeing. You walk through the world with less armor. You feel other people's pain without getting overwhelmed by it. You hold space for discomfort without collapsing into it. And all of that starts with a simple bedtime ritual, wishing well to yourself and others. So as you lie in bed tonight, remember, your body doesn't just need rest. Your heart does too. Give it that gift, not by force, not by strategy, but by presence. One phrase at a time, one breath at a time. Kindness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's just a quiet whisper in the dark. You are safe now. You can let go. And in that letting go, sleep will come. Not because you chased it, but because you created space for it to arrive. Sometimes the heart begins to soften. You feel the shift. After practicing loving kindness, your chest is lighter, your breath is deeper, and it feels like sleep should arrive naturally. And yet, something still resists. As though a hidden hand gently keeps your mind half awake, quietly agitated. Not loud, but steady. That's when it becomes clear. Emotional cleansing alone isn't enough. There's something older at work, deeper habits rooted in the mind itself. These are not about past events or specific people. They're patterns, and they show up every night unless seen clearly. In Buddhism, they are known as the 5 hindrances. These hindrances are not enemies, they are not flaws, they are simply natural movements of the untrained mind. But if we don't recognize them, they take over, especially during sleep. They interfere with your ability to release fully, to rest deeply. They keep the brain alert, the body tense, and the heart guarded. Understanding them is essential, not just to meditate better, but to sleep better, feel clearer, and live more peacefully. The first hindrance is sensual desire. It's not just about lust or craving pleasure. It's any form of wanting that grabs your attention and refuses to let go. It can be subtle, a craving for food, for validation, for entertainment, for a different feeling than the one you have right now. You lie in bed, and instead of feeling restful, the mind starts scanning for something more interesting. A memory, a fantasy, a plan, a snack. You scroll your phone, you chase a thought. It's not because you're weak, it's because the mind is restless in the presence of desire. It's seeking satisfaction from something outside itself. The problem isn't pleasure itself. The problem is grasping, the tightness, the neediness. This is what keeps the nervous system active. It's always preparing to get, to chase, to have, and even when you turn off all external stimuli, the craving continues inside. It says, "I'm not okay yet. I need more." That need blocks the relaxation required for deep rest. To dissolve sensual desire, the antidote is contentment. Not by pretending you don't want things, but by learning to recognize sufficiency. You reflect gently. In this moment, I am warm, I am safe, I am breathing. Nothing is missing. That recognition drops the mind into enoughness. Gratitude, when practiced not as a concept but as an experience, naturally dissolves craving. In that moment, the system no longer needs stimulation, and when the chase stops, rest becomes possible. Next comes ill will. This hindrance doesn't always show up as obvious anger. Sometimes it's irritation, impatience, coldness, or subtle judgment. It can be directed at others or even at yourself. Maybe you're replaying a disagreement. Maybe you're blaming yourself for something you didn't do. Even the smallest traces of ill will create tension in the chest, harden the breath, and close the body. And a closed body doesn't fall into sleep easily. Ill will is sharp. It activates the fight or flight response. The mind becomes alert, ready to defend itself or push something away. It can disguise itself as righteousness, as mental replay, as just wanting closure. But underneath it all is a refusal to accept the moment as it is. And that resistance keeps you locked in mental contraction. The antidote to ill will is compassion, not forced forgiveness, but the willingness to open just a little. Instead of repeating, "They shouldn't have," try, "This hurts, but I don't want to suffer more." That sentence alone breaks the cycle. Then you add softness, breathing into the area of tension, allowing the emotion to be felt without fueling it. Gradually, the heart opens again. And when the heart opens, the nervous system no longer prepares to fight. It prepares to rest. Sloth and torpor are the third hindrance. These are not simple tiredness. They are a kind of fog, a mental heaviness, a dullness that masquerades as sleepiness but actually blocks clarity. You might think you're sleepy, but your mind is not preparing for restful sleep. It's collapsing inward. This is the mind pulling away from presence, not entering it. And that pulling away often happens after long days of overstimulation or emotional suppression. This kind of dullness is tricky. It feels like relaxation, but it's not. It's actually disconnection. The body might lie still, but the mind doesn't transition into deep rest. It hovers in a gray zone, neither fully awake nor truly asleep. And when you wake up, you don't feel refreshed. You feel sluggish, like nothing was really reset. The antidote here is energy, specifically balanced alertness. That doesn't mean getting hyped up before bed. It means tuning in instead of zoning out. A very gentle practice of breath awareness helps, feeling the whole body breathing, staying present with the rise and fall of the abdomen. The key is not to push, but to gently engage the mind, like keeping a candle flame steady. You don't force brightness. You protect the flame from going out. This presence naturally transforms dullness into peaceful clarity, and from that clarity, the mind can slip into true restorative sleep. The fourth hindrance is restlessness and remorse. These two are often grouped together because they come from the same root, unresolved activity. The mind is still spinning, running, searching. It feels unsettled. This might look like physical fidgeting, tossing in bed, checking your phone repeatedly. But even without movement, the mental restlessness stays alive. You're caught in a loop, unfinished tasks, future worries, regrets about the day, unanswered messages. The mind acts like a dog pacing back and forth, trying to find the perfect spot, but never settling. What's worse is that restlessness is often mistaken for wakefulness. You might think you're alert, but really the mind is stuck in motion because it hasn't been given permission to stop. It's trying to finish something it couldn't complete during the day. Remorse adds to this. Guilt, a harsh inner voice replaying where you failed or fell short. These are not small background thoughts. They create a ripple of emotional heat that makes relaxation impossible. The antidote is grounding, simple, physical, anchored presence. You return to the body in a very direct way. Feel the weight of your body on the mattress. Feel the outline of your limbs. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Then bring attention to the breath, not as a technique, but as a resting place. Over and over again. Every time the mind wanders, you come back to what is real, here, now. This brings the system out of future and past, out of worry and regret, and back into the only place rest can happen, this moment. Finally, we come to doubt. The quietest of the hindrances, but often the most powerful. Doubt doesn't shout, it whispers, it asks questions that go in circles. Is this working? Why can't I sleep? Am I doing it right? Will I ever feel better? Doubt doesn't seek answers, it feeds on confusion. It keeps you second-guessing yourself, your practice, your path. And this uncertainty breeds tension. Doubt disconnects you from your inner wisdom. It keeps you looking outside, trying to fix or control what's happening. And the more you try to control, the more agitated the system becomes. Even when you're trying to sleep, doubt doesn't rest. It keeps checking, measuring, evaluating, and that ongoing questioning blocks the surrender needed for true sleep. The antidote is confidence, not ego-driven confidence, but trust in the path. Faith, not in something external, but in the power of awareness itself. You don't need to solve everything tonight. You just need to be present. When doubt arises, don't argue with it. Just acknowledge it. Ah, this is doubt. And then return to the breath. Return to the body. Trust that being here is enough. Over time, this trust deepens. You stop needing constant evidence. You start feeling the truth in your bones. That awareness itself is healing. That rest doesn't come from controlling the mind, but from releasing it. Doubt loses its grip when you no longer believe every thought it throws at you. When all 5 hindrances are present, they create a storm in the mind. But when you know them, name them, and meet them with skill, the storm quiets. Not because you forced it, but because you understood it. And that understanding is the true foundation of peace. None of these antidotes are quick fixes, they are gradual shifts. But each time you apply them, even in small ways, the quality of your sleep changes. You begin to fall asleep not because you escaped your mind, but because you befriended it. And in that friendship, rest becomes a natural expression, not of exhaustion, but of wholeness. As you move forward into deeper teachings, remember, these hindrances are not flaws to overcome. They are doors to deeper awareness. Each one, when understood, leads you back to the same place. Presence, openness, peace, and sleep, in its truest form, is simply the body and mind resting in the ease of being itself. Nothing more, nothing less. That's the path ahead. Not a struggle to silence the mind, but a journey to understand it, meet it, and gently guide it home. Once the hindrances begin to settle and the breath becomes a little softer, there is often a strange quiet that follows. Not peace, just yet, more like the space left behind after a long storm. And in that space, a question arises. Now what? If the mind is no longer chasing pleasure or resisting pain, if the body has calmed but the heart still feels uncertain, what direction do we face? This is where deeper guidance becomes essential. Not a rule book, not a method to force results, but a set of principles that quietly point us back to the center of ourselves. In Buddhist tradition, these principles are called the 10 paramis, or the 10 perfections. And they are not abstract ideas. They are tools for emotional reset, especially when used before sleep. The day leaves marks. Conversations, failures, temptations, missed opportunities. Even if the surface looks calm, deeper emotions remain. You may not have yelled at anyone today, but maybe you judged. Maybe you didn't speak unkindly, but you resented. Maybe you stayed silent, but inside you carried envy, pride, or regret. These residues don't go away on their own. They settle into the emotional body, and without a way to process them, they slowly harden. This is why reflection on the paramis at night matters. It's not for moral superiority, it's for emotional hygiene. Just like you clean your body before bed, you can clean your heart too. Start with generosity, not just what you gave, but how open your heart was. Did you give someone your full attention? Did you hold space when someone needed to speak? Were you willing to let go of being right so someone else could feel heard? Generosity here isn't just money or objects. It's the act of loosening your grip on time, energy, ego. Reflecting on where you practiced generosity softens the grasping part of the mind. And where you didn't, you notice, not to judge, but to gently reset. You close the day with a renewed wish to give more freely tomorrow, and that wish brings lightness to the heart, which carries you into sleep. Then comes virtue, the commitment to harmlessness. In a noisy world, it's easy to lose track of small ethical slips. Maybe it was gossip. Maybe it was dishonesty, not in words, but in intention. Maybe it was a small betrayal of your own values. Before bed, bring these into awareness, not to punish yourself, but to take responsibility with compassion. That act alone begins to restore trust in yourself. The nervous system relaxes when it knows your actions and values are in harmony. Reflecting on virtue gives the mind a clear foundation. You start to feel steady again, capable of integrity, even when no one is watching. And with that steadiness, the heart begins to rest. Renunciation follows, not as self-denial, but as wise letting go. Ask yourself what you clung to today. Was it attention, comfort, control, the need to win an argument? Where did you grip too tightly, and what did it cost your peace? The point isn't to feel ashamed. The point is to see clearly. Peace and clinging cannot live in the same breath. Even just recognizing one place where you could have released sooner starts to shift the inner balance. It rewires the story that says, more is better. You end the day not in scarcity, but in the deep satisfaction of enoughness. That is the kind of contentment that sleep responds to. Then there's wisdom, not knowledge, but clarity. The ability to see cause and effect, to notice when your actions bring stress and when they bring peace. Wisdom is what allows you to recognize emotional patterns not as facts, but as habits. It's what lets you say, I reacted today because I felt unseen, instead of simply blaming someone else. Wisdom doesn't make you cold. It makes you free. Each evening, you have the chance to look back on your choices, not through guilt, but through learning. And in doing so, you grow. This quiet growth gives your rest purpose. Sleep becomes a pause in a meaningful journey, not just an escape from it. Energy is next, not in the physical sense, but in the sense of right effort. Where did you show up fully today? Where did you avoid? Where did you give up too soon? Reflecting on energy isn't about measuring productivity. It's about alignment. Was your effort placed where it actually mattered? Often, our exhaustion doesn't come from doing too much, but from doing things that drain rather than serve us. Noticing this at night helps you recalibrate. You start choosing where to place your energy more wisely, and when effort is aligned with values, the heart doesn't burn out. It rests in satisfaction. Patience is one of the most misunderstood perfections. It's not passivity. It's strength under pressure. It's what allows you to hold steady when things don't go your way. Each night, reflect. Where did impatience tighten your chest today? Where did you rush? Where did you resist what was unfolding? Then also notice where you held space, where you breathed through discomfort without reacting. Even small moments of patience matter. They accumulate. And by honoring them at night, you reinforce the muscle. You become someone who doesn't panic when life gets slow or strange, That emotional resilience makes rest easier because you're not waiting for life to be perfect before you feel safe. Truthfulness brings you back into alignment with your voice. Not just whether you lied or told the truth, but whether your words reflected your heart. Did you speak from clarity or confusion? Did you hide behind politeness when something real wanted to be said? Truthfulness is not about being blunt. It's about being congruent. Even a few words out of alignment can leave emotional friction. Before sleep, look at where you didn't say what needed to be said, or said something you didn't mean. Not to dwell, but to learn. And where you did speak with courage, celebrate that. It builds trust in your voice. And self-trust is the foundation of emotional peace. Determination is the quiet fire inside. It's not forcing your way forward. It's the steady return to what matters. Ask yourself each night, what did I stay committed to today, even when it was hard? What did I let go of too soon? What values guided my actions? Even if you drifted, determination is the strength to come back, over and over. That coming back, even in reflection, builds momentum, the kind that carries you across hard moments. When the mind knows it doesn't have to be perfect, just persistent, it relaxes, and rest follows naturally from that kind of gentleness. Loving kindness, though already explored deeply, takes on new life here, not as a practice, but as a reflection. Where did you love today without needing a reason? Where did you close your heart out of fear or pride? What part of you most needed kindness but didn't receive it? Revisiting these moments reinforces your emotional compass. You're not analyzing, you're remembering, and memory, when used wisely, becomes a teacher. Each act of love, however small, becomes part of a larger story, a story that you can sleep peacefully inside. And finally, equanimity, the calm amidst it all, the balance that doesn't mean coldness, but inner spaciousness. Reflecting on equanimity is like checking the emotional temperature of your day. Where were you reactive? Where did you hold on too tightly? Where did you let go with grace? This isn't about detachment. It's about remembering you don't have to ride every wave. Some emotions can pass through you without pulling you under. And the more you notice where this balance already exists in your life, the more it grows. Equanimity makes the mind feel vast, unshaken, and that vastness is the perfect soil for deep, nourishing sleep. Bringing all 10 paramis into reflection doesn't take hours. It can be done in a few minutes of quiet honesty, not as a checklist, but as a gentle scan of the heart. What you're doing is more than thinking. You're recalibrating. You're ending the day by realigning with the kind of person you truly want to be. And the nervous system responds to that integrity. The mind softens, the breath deepens, the heart unclenches. This is why the paramis matter, not as ideals to reach someday, but as anchors you return to nightly. When everything else feels uncertain, they are steady. When emotions run wild, they are calming. When you feel lost, they are your compass. And when they are reflected on with sincerity, they change the shape of your inner world, slowly, silently, but undeniably. So by the time your head touches the pillow, you're no longer carrying the day's unfinished business. You've honored it, learned from it, and gently released it. And in that release, you don't just sleep, you heal. Even after aligning with the 10 perfections, Even when the heart feels clear and the mind calm, there are nights when something deeper stirs, a quiet discomfort, a strange sadness with no clear cause, an uneasiness that doesn't speak in full sentences but in sensations, tightness in the chest, tension in the jaw, shallow breath. It's not about what happened today. It's not about what was said or left unsaid. It's about what has been buried for a long time. Beneath our thoughts, beneath our memories, there's another layer, the unseen. These are not just thoughts or emotions. They are imprints, residues from past actions, past wounds, even from habits that stretch so far back we no longer remember their origin. This is the realm of shadow work. And within Buddhism, this work is sacred. Shadow work is the act of gently facing the parts of yourself you've ignored, denied, or disowned. Not to shame them, but to integrate them. It's not analysis. It's not storytelling. It's a direct meeting with what's been hidden, because what stays hidden controls us the most. And while we can keep busy during the day, at night, these unseen parts rise. They don't care how much meditation you've done or how kind you've been. They want to be seen. If they aren't, they keep speaking through anxiety, through insomnia, through dreams that don't make sense, but still shake you. In Buddhist teachings, this is not pathology. This is samsaric residue, the unprocessed remnants of attachment, aversion, and delusion, not just from this life, but possibly from others. That's not a belief to adopt or reject. It's an invitation to look more closely. Are there patterns in your emotional life that feel older than your memories? Are there reactions that come before thought, before logic? Shadow work looks at these not as problems, but as signals. The mind is not broken, it's layered, and sleep gives us access to those layers if we're willing to listen. Before sleep, instead of pushing away discomfort, you can turn toward it with curiosity. Not every night, not as a burden, but as an offering. You start by simply noticing what's alive in the background. Is there fear? Is there a vague sense of shame? Is there resistance to rest itself? Often, people struggle to sleep not because they are overstimulated, but because they are afraid of stillness. Stillness allows old pain to speak, and that's exactly what Buddhist shadow work helps you face, not to dwell, but to liberate. One way to begin this work is through inquiry. You lie down, close your eyes, and bring to mind the question, what am I avoiding? You don't chase the answer, you wait. You let the body speak. Sometimes the answer comes as a feeling, a knot in the stomach, a sudden restlessness. That's the beginning of the dialogue. Instead of tightening, you soften. I see you, you say inwardly. You're allowed to be here. That phrase alone breaks the pattern of suppression, and in breaking it, you give that old fear or guilt or grief space to breathe, space to finally loosen its grip. Buddhism doesn't ask us to fix the shadow. It asks us to hold it in awareness, to see it as part of the impermanent, conditioned flow of existence. That's where the healing begins, not by changing what's inside, but by no longer resisting it. When a fear is held without judgment, it loses its shape. When a buried emotion is met without a story, it dissolves. The mind begins to recognize that even its darkest corners are not threats. They are just parts of the whole, long waiting to return. Another powerful method is meeting the inner figures that arise. Sometimes what we suppress takes shape as inner voices. The critic, the abandoned child, the angry protector. Buddhist psychology understands these not as fixed identities, but as conditioned mental formations. Karma at work. These voices often appear strongest when you try to rest. Because sleep is surrender, and the shadow resists surrender. It wants control. So you speak directly, inwardly. What do you need from me? And then you listen. You don't argue. You listen like a patient teacher, and you respond not with promises, but with presence. I'm here now. I won't abandon you. That act alone starts to unwind years of internal conflict. This is where mindfulness becomes deeper than awareness of breath or body. It becomes mindfulness of the hidden. You begin to notice how subtle guilt follows you into the evening. You see how unresolved grief becomes tension in the ribs. You track how shame affects the way your body lies in bed, curled, armored, closed. And you don't rush to fix it. You stay. Yes, you say to each feeling, you belong. This is what frees the heart, not perfection, but inclusion. The Buddhist view of karmic energy supports this process. Karma is not punishment. It's momentum. Patterns replay themselves until they are fully seen. So, if the same discomfort arises each night, don't see it as failure. See it as a doorway, a specific invitation to meet what has been repeated for years, maybe lifetimes. Not with drama, but with stillness. When you meet it like that, something ancient softens, the pattern breaks, and what's left is a vast, clear space, ripe for deep rest. One of the most compassionate tools in this practice is forgiveness, but not the forgiveness of words or gestures. Inner forgiveness, the quiet release of resentment you've held against yourself. Many people cannot sleep because they believe they are unworthy of rest, unworthy of comfort. This belief doesn't speak loudly. It lives in the nervous system. It shows up as the inability to relax fully, as the constant scanning for what could go wrong. So you meet that belief gently. Even this part of me deserves kindness. That sentence, when spoken from the heart, can release years of internal pressure, because what's often in the shadow is not evil, it's pain. Pain that was never met with warmth. You become the one who finally brings that warmth. This practice doesn't replace ethics or external action. It complements them. You still take responsibility for your actions. You still live with integrity. But you stop fighting parts of yourself that were shaped by pain. You start seeing all of yourself as workable, as part of the path. And that wholeness is what allows the body to exhale, to stop holding tension as armor, to sleep not just as a break, but as a return to trust. Symbolically, sleep is like a small death, a letting go of control, and the shadow fears death, not the physical kind, but the death of the ego's grip. So each night, when you choose presence over avoidance, when you listen instead of suppress, you practice dying a little, not in fear, but in freedom. You let go of what no longer serves. You bow to what remains, and slowly, the fear of stillness becomes the joy of silence. This is not easy work. It's tender. It requires patience. Some nights, the shadow speaks loudly. Some nights, it hides. But over time, you learn its language. You stop fearing its presence. You even start to thank it, because every layer you uncover brings you closer to what doesn't need fixing, your basic, untouchable awareness. And so, this becomes your pre-sleep ritual, not just preparing the bed, but preparing the heart. Not through effort, but through honesty. You close your eyes and open the door inward. You welcome whatever walks through, and by morning you wake not just rested, but a little more whole. In that wholeness, you carry less, you react less, you need less. And when night comes again, you no longer dread the darkness. You meet it like an old friend, with room in your heart for everything it brings. Because nothing in you needs to be exiled, not even the shadow, especially not the shadow. After spending time with the shadow, acknowledging its voice, sitting with its discomfort, offering it space, you start to sense something profound. A loosening, a quiet release, but also a question that's hard to name. When you strip away the guilt, the fear, the suppressed stories, what's left? Who is left? And perhaps more importantly, who has been carrying all of this? The idea of me that feels so solid during the day starts to tremble in the softness of night. This is not confusion, it's clarity trying to emerge. What remains in this moment when effort drops and identification begins to fade? The answer is found not in more thoughts, but in less clinging. It is in this threshold that the Buddha's teaching of anatta, or non-self, begins to gently open a door, not to loss, but to freedom. The concept of non-self is often misunderstood as erasing identity or denying the personal experience. But it is not about erasing the human story. It's about no longer confusing the story for the one who watches it. The self that you protect, defend, and describe each day is not a fixed thing. It is a process, a collection of habits, sensations, memories, opinions, and reactions. It shifts constantly, depending on mood, context, and conditioning. And yet, we hold to it as if it were a solid object, one that must be managed and improved endlessly. That very holding is what creates tension, especially when we try to rest. At the edge of sleep, this sense of self becomes particularly active. It wants to review the day, plan the next, resolve unfinished business. But what it is really doing is trying to survive. The ego, even when tired, resists surrender. Sleep feels like a threat to its structure because it is not in control there. So it begins a subtle fight, pulling attention to thoughts, identities, unresolved images. It whispers reminders. Don't forget this. What if that happens? Who are you if you let go right now? The practice of anatta is not to fight these thoughts. It is to watch them arise without attaching identity to them. This is a thought about me. This is a memory passing through. This is fear pretending to be truth. You don't stop the stream. You step back from its center. You notice that even the thought, "I can't sleep," is just that. A thought, not a truth, not a failure, just a conditioned sentence appearing in awareness. The less you resist it, the more transparent it becomes. Over time, this shifts the way you relate to your entire experience. Thoughts come, but they are not you. Emotions rise, but they are not you. Even the body itself, full of sensation, is not fully you. It is part of nature, breathing and pulsing in patterns you did not choose. This realization is not abstract philosophy. It's a direct, intimate feeling of space, a subtle detachment that brings with it relief. You no longer have to hold it all together. You no longer have to prove anything. You can simply be. This perspective allows hypnagogic surrender to unfold. The hypnagogic state, the space between wakefulness and sleep, is one of the most sensitive windows in the entire day. It is where the mind becomes more receptive, where the sense of I begins to dissolve, where images arise spontaneously. For many, this transition is blocked by fear. The self wants to stay awake, to stay in control. But with anatta, you don't resist the drift. You allow it. You let yourself slide out of the mental armor and into the softness of unknowing. This is why deep sleep can feel so healing. It is the one place where the constructed self is completely gone. In dreamless sleep, there is no personality, no storyline, no agenda, just stillness. The reason some people wake up feeling clearer after sleep is because for a few hours they experienced freedom from the burden of self, even without knowing it. But through practice, this can be touched consciously. You can approach sleep not just as rest, but as release. One way to explore this is through gentle observation before bed. As thoughts arise, simply say inwardly, "Not me, not mine." This is not detachment from life, it's recognition of impermanence. That voice in your head is not a permanent self, it is a pattern. And when you no longer cling to it, it loses its power to disturb you. Even intense emotions, when seen through this lens, begin to lose their grip. Sadness arises, but you no longer say, "I am sad." You say, "Sadness is here." And then it passes, just like a cloud in the sky. This shift is subtle, but radical. It softens the ego's need to manage every moment. And that softening is essential for true surrender into sleep, because surrender is not collapse. It is release. It is the willingness to fall back into the unknown without the demand to control it. This is the heart of anatta, not erasing the self, but seeing through its illusion of solidity. Another layer of this practice involves observing the way we hold roles. Throughout the day, we are someone, a parent, a worker, a seeker, a friend. These identities are useful, but when they become fixed, we carry them into the night. The body may lie down, but the role stays upright. It keeps performing in the mind, reviewing, planning, narrating. Before bed, it helps to gently name the roles you've been playing. Acknowledge them, thank them, and then set them down, even for a few hours. Tonight, I am no one in particular. I am just awareness, resting in awareness. This is not fantasy. It is truth. This truth has deep implications for healing, because most suffering at night doesn't come from physical tiredness. It comes from mental contraction, and contraction always follows identification. The more tightly you hold to being a fixed someone, the more pressure you feel to protect that image. But when you see that the self is just a flow of causes and conditions, you can rest inside that flow. You can stop swimming and let the current carry you. This does not make you passive, it makes you free. Free to meet each moment without needing to shape it. Free to let thoughts pass without chasing them. free to feel pain without becoming the one who suffers. This freedom, even touched lightly before bed, transforms the quality of your rest. You begin to sleep not just as a body, but as consciousness softening into itself. There are also practical ways to embody this. When you lie down, feel the body not as my body, but as part of the earth. Sense its heaviness, its warmth, its breath. Let go of ownership. Let go of name and form. Let the boundaries dissolve. When thoughts appear, don't chase them. Don't resist them. Watch them as if they are leaves floating downstream. This watching does not require effort. It requires trust. The trust that awareness is enough, that presence is enough. This is the quiet miracle of anatta. It doesn't remove your humanity. It reveals what has always been deeper than it. You are not your thoughts. You are not your fear. You are not the one who failed or succeeded today. You are the space in which all these movements happened. And that space, when not contracted into identity, is vast, spacious, peaceful. As you rest in this space, sleep becomes not a break from your life, but a continuation of your path. Each night, the self dissolves. Each morning, it reappears. But through this practice, you begin to see that you are not just the one who wakes up and lives a story. You are also the one who watches it unfold. And in that watching, there is peace. So, as you drift tonight, soften the grip, loosen the names, release the roles. Rest not as someone who must become more, but as awareness that is already whole. Let the self dissolve into stillness. Let stillness welcome you home. When the grip of identity begins to soften and the constructed self fades into the quiet space of awareness, there is often a natural stillness that follows. But beneath that stillness, the currents of deeper layers still move. Awareness may not cling to the self, yet the mind continues to dream. Thoughts turn into symbols, images appear from nowhere, and emotions rise without cause. And this raises a subtle question. If there is no fixed self, what shapes these dreams? Why do certain emotions keep returning in sleep, even when we are no longer consciously feeding them? The answer lies in the unseen impressions that actions leave behind, what the Buddha called karma. Karma is not simply a law of cosmic reward and punishment. It is the natural unfolding of causes and conditions. Every intentional action leaves a residue, a kind of mental echo. When we act out of anger, greed, compassion, or wisdom, those moments leave impressions not only in our memory, but in the very structure of consciousness. These impressions, while often unnoticed during the day, can resurface with clarity during sleep. When the ordinary filters of the thinking mind quiet down, these deeper patterns rise into dreams. Some people carry out seemingly minor acts, a harsh word, a selfish decision, a betrayal ignored, and think those moments are gone. But in the language of karma, nothing is ever lost. What is not understood or reconciled finds its way back into the stream of mind, often through emotion, sometimes through images, and frequently through dreams. This is not superstition. It is a reflection of how the mind works. Unresolved energy returns until it is met with awareness. Dreams offer a canvas where the subconscious reorganizes itself. What we experience as strange narratives or emotional intensity at night is often the movement of stored karma. A dream of being chased may reflect fear left unprocessed. A dream of falling might be rooted in unresolved insecurity. A conflict with someone in a dream may mirror guilt we have not addressed. And while not every dream has a clear meaning, many are influenced by the ethical residue of our daily and past actions. This is where Buddhist practice brings something rare and powerful, the understanding that ethics is not only a social guideline, but an internal compass. When our actions align with truth, kindness, and awareness, they leave a gentle footprint. When they come from delusion, harm, or neglect, they leave friction. That friction doesn't only appear as stress or restlessness, it often continues into the dream world. This is why a person who lives ethically tends to sleep more peacefully. It is not because they are perfect. It is because their inner world is not full of conflict. They are not suppressing regret. They are not haunted by what they pretended not to feel. Ethical living brings clarity to the layers of mind. It creates fewer seeds of confusion. When the head touches the pillow, there is less to fear, less to run from, and less to untangle. To work with karma through dreams, the first step is remembering that sleep does not exempt you from awareness. Just because you are not conscious in the usual sense doesn't mean you are absent. The mind still responds, and it responds most to what has been left unresolved. That is why examining our actions before sleep becomes a crucial practice, not to judge ourselves, but to clear the slate. A simple reflection each night can shift the tone of your inner world. Where did I act with wisdom today? Where did I cause harm? Is there anything I regret? Noticing these quietly brings them into the light, where they begin to soften. When you reflect honestly, the burden begins to lift. Even if nothing is said out loud, the heart feels acknowledged. And acknowledgement is often all that unresolved karma needs. It is the refusal to look that creates turbulence. The willingness to turn toward our ethical residue, even in silence, can change the content and tone of dreams. This doesn't mean dreams will become perfect. It means they will become less reactive. You may still dream, but the dreams won't carry as much charge. They won't pull you into stories of fear, guilt, or craving as often. And when such dreams do arise, they can be seen for what they are. Old energy passing through. Not a message, not a prophecy, just conditioned mental activity completing its course. This process is not mental control. It's emotional purification. Through daily mindfulness and ethical reflection, the mind starts to clean itself. What used to be hidden becomes seen. What used to feel heavy begins to release. And that release naturally affects how we sleep, what we dream, and how we feel when we wake. There is also a deeper level to this. Sometimes we carry patterns that didn't begin in this life. Whether or not one believes in past lives is not the point. What matters is the experience. A person may react strongly to something they've never encountered, feel guilt that seems disconnected from memory, or have recurring dreams that don't match any known story. From a Buddhist view, these are signs of deeper karmic threads. They are not random. They are the unfolding of old causes that now find space to express themselves. The important thing is not to fear these impressions, but to meet them with patience. If a dream repeats, or if sleep feels disturbed without cause, you can ask inwardly, what is trying to be seen? Often the response is not words, but sensation. The body tenses, the breath shortens. That's the clue. You don't need to decode the story, you just need to be present with what arises. That presence is what begins to dissolve the knot. In this way, dream work becomes part of spiritual practice, not through interpretation, but through intention. Each night before sleep, you can set the mind with clarity. May I see what I need to see. May all unresolved energy pass with ease. May I rest in awareness, no matter what arises. This turns the sleep state from a passive escape into an active, gentle field of purification. Another helpful practice is metta, or loving kindness, specifically directed toward the self. Because most people carry self-directed karma, resentment, shame, or rejection of parts of themselves. These seeds manifest not only in thoughts, but in restless nights and painful dreams. When you practice metta sincerely before bed, you soften those inner knots. May I be free from harm. May I forgive what needs forgiveness. May I rest with ease. These phrases, spoken with care, begin to overwrite the deeper karmic imprints, not by force, but by consistent, gentle attention. The same is true for others. If a dream involves a specific person repeatedly, it may reflect karmic tension. Even if nothing can be resolved externally, offering kindness internally can shift the pattern. Wishing them well before sleep, not as performance, but as healing, allows your subconscious to let go. And when the subconscious lets go, the emotional body begins to release. This release is what prepares the mind for dreamless sleep, the deepest rest of all. It's also important to mention the role of mindfulness throughout the day. Karma is not something that happens far away. It is created in every moment of reaction, intention, speech, and thought. What you feed your mind becomes the material for your dreams. If the day is full of agitation, unconscious scrolling, conflict, or harsh self-talk, the night will often carry that echo. So the more intentional you are during the day, the less repair you need to do at night. That doesn't mean perfection, it means presence. Choosing one moment at a time to act from awareness rather than reactivity. Each small act of patience, honesty, or compassion doesn't just change your outer world, it softens the inner one. And that softness is what allows the dream world to be lighter, cleaner, less stormy. Even dreamless sleep is influenced by karma. When the heart is clear, the mind rests fully. When the ethical field is stable, the body relaxes. There is nothing to process, nothing to defend, nothing left spinning in the background. That kind of sleep is rare for many, but it is possible. Not through effort, but through care. Through living each day with the kind of intention that plants peaceful seeds. So each night you can pause. Before rituals, before silence, simply ask, what am I carrying? You don't need to solve it. Just feel it. If there's tension, name it. If there's regret, breathe into it. If there's peace, honor it. That moment of honest reflection sets the tone. You are telling your consciousness, you are not ignoring the inner world, you are tending to it. And in that tending, dreams become less chaotic. Sleep becomes more than rest. It becomes renewal, a return to clarity, a quiet unfolding of what needs to move through, what needs to settle, and what is finally ready to dissolve. This is the gift of understanding karma as part of the sleep cycle. You no longer fear the night. You no longer avoid the emotions that arise there. You meet them with wisdom. You meet them with patience. And as each night passes, the layers of residue slowly fall away. What remains is presence, and presence, even in sleep, is peace. As the understanding of karma deepens and we begin to see how the echoes of our actions ripple into the dream space, another question naturally arises. If dreams carry the emotional weight of our past, can they also be a place of healing? Not just passive displays of residue, but active spaces for transformation. In the early Buddhist texts, this isn't discussed in detail, but in the Southeast Asian esoteric traditions, particularly those of the Yogavatara lineage, there are practices that go much further. These teachings view the dream state not only as a result of karma, but as a sacred realm in which inner purification can occur directly. They offer methods for becoming aware within dreams and then using that awareness as a tool for emotional and spiritual liberation. The Yogavatara tradition, once widespread across Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand, weaves together Theravada doctrine, visualization, ritual, and breath control. But central to its deeper levels is the insight that consciousness does not cease when the body sleeps. It merely shifts form. For these practitioners, the dream state is not random or trivial. It is a continuation of practice. They train to remain aware during sleep, and not just to control the dream, but to learn from it. Lucid dreaming in this context is not entertainment. It is meditation in another dimension of mind. In this tradition, when one becomes lucid in a dream, that is, aware that one is dreaming, there is an opportunity to encounter and dissolve emotional blocks directly. Fear, guilt, grief, even confusion can be faced with clarity. These emotions often appear in symbolic form: a collapsing house, a confrontation with a figure from the past, a dangerous animal. The key is not to fight or escape these dream images, but to recognize them as mirrors of the internal field. Instead of reacting, the practitioner brings awareness to the image and studies the emotion underneath it. This subtle shift, awareness without identification, is the first step in emotional purification. In Yogavatara manuals, dream awareness is cultivated through a combination of daily mindfulness, pre-sleep intentions, and breath-based concentration. Practitioners are taught to reflect on impermanence and non-self throughout the day, so that when sleep comes, the mind is already trained to notice change. At night, before sleep, they set clear intentions. Tonight, may I know when I am dreaming. Tonight, may I face what is hidden. Tonight, may this dream be a place of practice. These aren't affirmations. They are mental formations designed to carry consciousness across the threshold into the dream world. Dreams that arise with these intentions are often charged, not always beautiful. The subconscious resists being exposed. Emotional residues that have been buried for years can surface quickly, but with proper grounding, the practitioner meets these experiences not as problems, but as gifts. When grief appears, it is held without judgment. When fear arises, it is studied, not avoided. And over time, the energy behind these emotions begins to change. They lose their grip. They lose their urgency. The dream itself becomes a ritual space where karmic patterns are revealed, witnessed, and released. This process depends heavily on emotional honesty. lucidity alone is not enough. Without mindfulness and clear ethics, lucid dreams can become just another form of desire or control. But in Yoga-Vakara practice, the dream is approached with reverence. The practitioner does not manipulate the dream for pleasure. They enter it with humility, aware that the dream figures may carry important messages. A terrifying figure may represent suppressed rage. A weeping child may reflect ignored vulnerability. Even familiar environments can change tone, reflecting how the emotional mind perceives safety or danger. The goal is not to create the perfect dream. The goal is to use the dream to cleanse what daytime awareness often avoids. Emotional purification in the dream state happens when the heart lets go of its resistance. It might look like finally forgiving someone, not through thought, but through direct experience. It might feel like crying in the dream and waking up lighter. It might involve facing a situation that once caused shame and responding with clarity instead of collapse. These moments don't just change the dream, they change the mind. The subconscious accepts what happened. The nervous system integrates it, and sleep begins to carry a deeper purpose. Because these traditions understand the mind as layered, they teach that deep emotions can only be transformed when they are seen from multiple levels. Daytime mindfulness addresses surface reactions, but dreams access the more ancient patterns, the ones that formed long before you had words for them. The patterns that show up in relationships, in unexpected triggers, in chronic anxiety. When you become conscious in dreams, you enter a place where these patterns can be reshaped, not through will, but through presence. One of the unique teachings in this lineage is the use of sacred syllables or mantras inside the dream. Practitioners are taught to repeat certain sounds while dreaming, silent or vocalized. These sounds serve as stabilizers. They ground lucidity and also disrupt the automatic flow of the dream. The moment you speak a mantra inside a dream, the dream begins to respond differently. Sometimes it becomes clearer. Sometimes it breaks open. What remains is not silence, but a kind of spaciousness. In that space, deeper emotions rise to the surface and can be faced directly. Another key technique is awareness of breath within the dream. This may sound impossible, but it is trained gradually. By becoming aware of the breath in the waking state, especially before sleep, you carry that habit into the subtle body. In dreams, breath sensations are symbolic, but the awareness of breathing, rhythm, constriction, expansion, offers a direct doorway into the emotional state. You might notice the breath stop in a dream when facing a fear. That's a clue. You meet it, breathe through it, and watch as the emotion behind it begins to melt. This is not just dream control. It is karmic purification through embodied presence. Dreams, in this view, are not private cinema. They are communication. Not from outside, but from the deeper layers of your own psyche. The more you listen, the more coherent they become. And over time, even disturbing dreams lose their edge. They become part of the inner conversation, part of the unfolding. The practitioner wakes up not just with rest, but with insight. Not just with memory, but with transformation. There are accounts in Yoga-Vakara texts of advanced practitioners who used lucid dreams to rehearse compassion, to meet beings of light, to release ancestral trauma. While these experiences are rare, they point to the deeper possibilities of the path. For most, it begins more humbly. waking up from a dream that once would have caused panic, but now feels resolved. Noticing that the same dream has stopped repeating. Feeling that the emotions once buried are no longer hiding in the background. These shifts may seem subtle, but they are profound. Importantly, these dream practices are always supported by ethics and intention. The dream is not a replacement for waking life, it is a mirror of it. If your waking actions are harmful, your dream life will reflect that confusion. If your waking practice is sincere, your dreams will deepen that sincerity. This is why the Yoga-Vakara tradition integrates chanting, meditation, and moral training with dream practice. The outer discipline strengthens the inner journey. To begin working in this way doesn't require becoming a monastic. It starts with paying attention, keeping a dream journal, noticing emotional patterns in sleep, setting a clear intention each night, not to dream what you want, but to meet what is real. A willingness to face what arises with patience and curiosity. And slowly, the relationship changes. You no longer see dreams as distractions. You see them as teachers. This is how sleep becomes sacred, not just a biological reset, but a spiritual continuation, a place where the subconscious is not feared, but befriended, where fear, guilt, and grief are not suppressed, but transformed, not overnight, not all at once, but steadily, lovingly, through attention and surrender. And with each dream that becomes a little clearer, with each fear that dissolves a little more, you step closer to what the Yoga-Vakara path ultimately reveals, that even in darkness, even in the unknown, awareness remains. And where awareness is present, liberation is always possible. As the understanding of dream practice deepens and lucid awareness begins to touch emotional roots that were once hidden, something quieter begins to call for attention. It is not an image, not a memory, not even a feeling. It is the silence itself, not emptiness, but a fullness without noise. After deep inner work, whether during the day or in the subtle realm of dreams, what the mind truly longs for is rest from interpretation. Not more experiences, but space. This space is not passive, it is powerful, and it is best approached through something almost forgotten in modern life: noble silence. Noble silence is not just the absence of talking, it is the practice of consciously choosing not to engage in speech, mental chatter, or sensory stimulation. It is the deliberate resting of the tongue, the mind, and even the body from compulsive activity. It creates a boundary around your inner space and protects it. While this practice is central in monastic life, its relevance to modern people, especially as a pre-sleep ritual, is far deeper than most realize. In a world flooded with content, conversations, and endless input, silence is no longer normal, and because of that, sleep becomes difficult, not due to lack of tiredness, but because the nervous system never gets to slow down. As sleep approaches, the body begins to prepare. Hormones shift, breath deepens, heart rate slows. But the mind, especially in overstimulated environments, often doesn't follow. It remains active, interpreting, replaying, calculating. This is where noble silence becomes a bridge. It tells the mind, there is nothing left to say. There is nowhere left to go. You are safe to rest now. And with this message, something begins to soften. The inner machinery winds down. The emotional residue of the day, which is often amplified by retelling and verbal repetition, starts to lose fuel. One of the most overlooked benefits of silence before bed is emotional containment. Throughout the day, we speak not only to communicate, but to process. We explain our emotions to others and to ourselves. We describe problems repeatedly, but this constant processing can become a loop. By narrating our pain or frustration endlessly, we often keep it alive. Silence interrupts that cycle, not by repression, but by stillness. It invites a deeper layer of intelligence to emerge, one that doesn't rely on words. In that quiet, the nervous system senses that it is no longer under attack. There is no need to prepare a response, no need to rehearse or defend. This is what creates emotional stability. Physiologically, silence activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the rest and digest mode, the state where healing begins. In contrast, constant conversation, screen time, and multitasking trigger the sympathetic response, keeping the system alert. Many people lie in bed without understanding that their brain is still in active mode. Even without external noise, internal talking, mental conversations, inner rehearsals keep the stress response alive. Noble silence, practiced intentionally in the hour before bed, helps deactivate that mode. It gives the body a clear signal. We are done for today. The silence also restores the sense of presence. When there is no talking and no external input, you begin to notice small things. The texture of the sheets, the rhythm of the breath, the sound of night outside the window. These sensations are grounding. They bring awareness back into the body. And the body, when noticed in this way, feels safe. Safety is what sleep requires. Without it, the body cannot fully release. A common misunderstanding is that silence is empty or boring, but true noble silence is full. It is rich with subtle awareness. The absence of talking is not a void, it is a canvas on which deeper truths begin to appear. The mind, given space, starts to organize itself. Emotions rise and settle naturally, thoughts slow without needing to be forced. The mental energy usually spent on reacting is redirected toward integration. You feel more whole, more contained. This containment is what supports sleep. To apply noble silence before sleep, the approach must be intentional. It is not just about being quiet. It is about protecting your inner field from new inputs. That means turning off digital devices at least an hour before bed. It means resisting the urge to scroll or send one last message. It means stepping away from conversations that activate emotion, even if they are not negative. It also includes choosing not to start internal dialogues, conversations that happen in your head even when no one else is present. You tell yourself, this can wait. Now is the time to rest. Creating a ritual around this helps. Dimming the lights, reducing movement, sitting quietly with a warm cup of tea, or simply breathing mindfully. These are not techniques for relaxation. They are signals to the nervous system. We are shifting states. Over time, the body begins to anticipate this routine. It knows that silence means safety. Safety means stillness. And stillness makes rest possible. There is also a deeper layer to noble silence. In Buddhist monastic practice, noble silence is linked to the cultivation of wisdom. When the tongue rests, the mind listens. Without the distraction of speech, inner patterns become clearer. Even in lay life, a few minutes of real silence before sleep can reveal what has gone unnoticed all day. Perhaps a resentment you didn't realize you were carrying, or a joy you forgot to feel. Silence is not just an absence, it is a teacher. Emotional detox through silence happens when we stop adding more to what's already full. The mind is like a container. Every interaction, every thought, every word fills it. At some point, the only thing left to do is stop filling and let it settle. In that settling, what's important rises. What is no longer useful falls away, and the emotional field resets. Not by solving problems, but by releasing the need to talk about them. There is also a cleansing that happens in the absence of stimulation. Our senses are constantly absorbing light, sound, information. Even joyful experiences can overwhelm if they are non-stop. Silence reduces this sensory overload. It gives the senses a chance to rest. This sensory rest is essential for the brain to shift into sleep architecture. Without it, even if the body lies still, the brain remains in alert mode. By committing to silence, you give your brain a signal. No more input. Now we process, then we release. This is where silence and mindfulness merge. Mindful silence is not empty. It is aware. It notices without reacting. It allows without adding. It witnesses without needing to label. This kind of attention is deeply soothing. It tells the inner system, you are being held, you are not being pushed. That feeling alone can undo a whole day's worth of tension. In some traditions, silence is also understood as reverence. Not for a deity or idea, but for life itself. The silence before sleep becomes a form of bowing to the day, a way of saying, I have done enough, let it be. This is where noble silence crosses into spiritual territory, not religious, but sacred. You realize that in silence, you are not losing anything. You are returning to something that does not need improvement, commentary, or control. For those who struggle with overthinking at night, noble silence is not about trying to push thoughts away. It's about not feeding them. When the mind offers a new topic, you don't argue or engage. You return to the breath. You feel your body. You rest in the quiet. You trust that whatever needs to be handled will be handled tomorrow, not now. Now is for stillness. Even brief periods of noble silence practiced consistently can change the sleep experience. You may still have busy thoughts, but they won't feel as loud. You may still feel tension, but it will pass more quickly, because the silence creates space. And space is what the nervous system has been starving for. In the end, noble silence is not a technique. It is a choice to stop reaching, to stop proving, to stop performing. It is the moment when you tell yourself, enough, for now, enough. And in that choice, healing begins. This healing is not dramatic. It is not immediate, but it is steady. And over time, it begins to touch places inside you that no amount of talking ever could. Places that don't need more explanation, but only rest. And as that rest deepens, The body remembers what it means to truly let go. The mind no longer fights the dark. The heart no longer resists the quiet. And sleep arrives, not because you forced it, but because you finally made room for it to come. As silence deepens and becomes part of your nightly rhythm, a certain clarity begins to grow. With less noise, the nervous system recalibrates. With fewer words, the emotions settle. And as this becomes more consistent, the mind starts showing its next challenge, movement without purpose. Even in silence, the mind continues to grasp, chase, and wander. This restless activity, known in Buddhist teachings as the monkey mind, becomes more obvious precisely when everything else grows quiet. The thoughts don't stop just because words do. In fact, sometimes they become louder. And for those who seek not only rest, but a profound kind of stillness that clears both mental noise and emotional weight, there is a practice rooted deep in the Buddha's teachings, the absorption states known as jhana. The jhanas are not mystical powers or spiritual fantasies. They are refined states of mental unification where the mind becomes so still, so collected, that all inner chatter falls away. These states are reached through concentration, meditation, and they offer a kind of mental rest that is far deeper than ordinary sleep. Unlike dreaming, where the mind is still processing and reacting, the jhanas provide a pause in the narrative, a complete stepping out of the habitual activity of thought. For those who learn to access them, even lightly, they serve as powerful gateways into sleep that is not just deep, but entirely free from the noise of the world and the residue of the day. Before understanding how the jhanas work in relation to sleep, it's important to see what they are not. They are not escape routes. They are not bypasses for emotional work. They are not about zoning out. The mind in jhana is fully alert, completely present, and deeply tranquil. It is the alertness of a mountain, unmoved by wind or rain. This stillness is cultivated through sustained attention on a single object, often the breath, sometimes a mantra, sometimes a visual image. As attention deepens and distractions fade, a natural progression begins. The body softens. The heart lifts. Joy arises, not from stimulation, but from the absence of disturbance. What makes jhana so different from other states of calm is the degree of stability. Once the mind enters the first jhana, it no longer flits between thoughts. It stays anchored. The inner critic, the planner, the commentator, these voices disappear. In their place is a deep internal coherence. The mind, no longer fragmented, gathers itself fully. And in that gathering, rest is not just mental, it becomes cellular. The entire nervous system enters a new rhythm. For sleep, this is transformative, because what keeps people awake is rarely just external stimulation. It's the inability to stop reacting. Thoughts arise, and the mind responds. A memory flashes, and the heart contracts. Jhana training reverses this pattern. It teaches the mind not to follow, not to grab, not to resist. It introduces the possibility that you can be fully conscious, completely aware, and yet undisturbed. And when the mind learns that, it doesn't need to hold on anymore. It can drop into sleep, not through exhaustion, but through mastery. Practicing toward jhana begins long before bedtime. It starts with developing concentration in daily life. Every time you bring attention back to the breath, you're training the mind to return. Every time you notice distraction and release it without judgment, you're building the conditions for stillness. This process is slow. It requires patience, but each step strengthens the mind's ability to stay with one object long enough for the deeper calm to arise. As you move towards sleep, instead of shifting to passive relaxation, you can stay with the breath intentionally. Not as a technique to fall asleep, but as a way to enter clarity. Let the breath be soft, continuous, effortless. Rest your attention there, not forcing it, not drifting from it. When thoughts arise, notice them as movements, not messages. Let them pass like wind across water. The mind may resist at first. It may look for stimulation, for narrative. Stay with the breath. Stay with the sensation of the body breathing itself. Slowly, the movements quiet. At some point, joy begins to arise. Not loud, not dramatic. A quiet inner brightness. This is one of the signs of entering the early stages of jhana. The joy is not emotional, it's energetic. It feels like expansion without effort. The body feels light, the heart spacious, and if the attention remains steady, this joy transforms into a deep tranquility. Even deeper is the one-pointedness, the moment when all attention is fully gathered and the outer world recedes. It is here, in this threshold, that the dreamless depth becomes possible. This state is not sleep, but it prepares the mind for the deepest kind of sleep. When jhana precedes sleep, dreams often fade, or if they appear, they are light, coherent, and calm, because the mind is no longer carrying the clutter of unprocessed emotion. It has been clarified in stillness, and even a short time spent in this stillness can replace hours of restless sleep. Some advanced meditators use this state to rest deeply without entering conventional sleep at all. For most, however, it becomes a bridge, a transition from active thinking into full surrender. One of the most important outcomes of jhana training is the purification of attention. In daily life, attention is scattered. It jumps from screen to sound, from problem to memory. This scattering weakens the mind. In jhana, attention is purified. It becomes whole again. This wholeness brings not only calm, but insight. After emerging from even a short absorption, the world appears sharper. Emotions feel clearer. Decisions become simpler, and the need for external stimulation diminishes. This internal clarity supports every aspect of well-being, including sleep. When the mind has tasted that level of stillness, it stops craving distraction. The nervous system, accustomed to constant activity, begins to unwind. The body sleeps more deeply because it trusts the mind is not in chaos. The emotional body, no longer needing to process stress during dreams, becomes quiet. Rest is no longer something you chase. It becomes your natural state. Importantly, the jhanas are not dependent on belief. They do not require adopting any doctrine. They are experiential. Anyone who cultivates concentration and steadiness of attention can begin to touch these states. The path is gradual but reliable, and even the early stages bring real benefits. More clarity, less reactivity, fewer distractions in the mind as sleep approaches. There is also a hidden benefit that is rarely discussed. The jhanas train the mind to stay still even in the face of subtle fear. Many people resist sleep not because they are overstimulated, but because they are subconsciously afraid of losing control. Jhana practice teaches the mind how to surrender, consciously, gracefully, with full awareness. It is a training in letting go. And that training reshapes the relationship with rest. In monastic settings, practitioners often meditate late into the night, sometimes replacing sleep entirely with deep absorption. They do not suffer for it. On the contrary, their faces glow with vitality. This is not due to some spiritual magic. It is the result of a mind that no longer fights itself, a mind that knows how to rest fully, even in wakefulness. For most people, the goal is not to replace sleep, but to use the principles of jhana to improve it, to tame the restless mind before bed, to give attention a home, and to bring the body into stillness not through exhaustion, but through awareness. Over time, this changes the way you relate to both sleep and waking. You no longer go to bed hoping sleep will come. You enter rest with the same clarity you bring to meditation. You understand that letting go is not something that happens to you, it is something you practice. And the more you practice, the more effortless it becomes. So each night, as you prepare to sleep, treat the breath as your anchor, not to fall asleep, but to gather your mind. Let the body soften. Let thoughts pass. Let joy arise without grasping. Let tranquility deepen without seeking. And if sleep comes, let it come from stillness. If it doesn't, remain with the breath. Either way, you are resting in truth. Because the ultimate goal is not just to sleep without dreams, it is to live without agitation. And jhana, even touched briefly, reveals that this is possible. Not someday, but here, now, in this breath, in this stillness, where the monkey mind finally settles and the heart remembers how to be quiet. As the mind becomes still and begins to taste the depth of inner absorption, a new quality starts to surface. An awareness that does not just rest, but begins to radiate. Beyond silence, beyond concentration, there is a subtle shift in intention. What do we carry into the stillness? What energies remain in the emotional body after the thoughts have quieted? A calm mind is not the end of practice. It is a doorway. The next step is learning how to hold the heart in balance, how to make sure that what lives beneath the quiet is not tension disguised as peace, but true emotional harmony. In Buddhist teachings, this refinement of heart is cultivated through the 4 divine abodes, or Brahma-viharas: loving-kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These are not distant ideals. They are real, daily practices that, when embodied, create the perfect conditions for restful, regenerative sleep. Each of these qualities has a particular function in emotional healing. They are not interchangeable. They meet different emotional imbalances and regulate the inner system in specific ways. As a pre-sleep practice, working with the Brahma-viharas helps you examine the subtle emotional weather of your day and gently realign the heart with what is wholesome, stable, and open. When the heart carries the residue of conflict, unmet grief, or silent comparison into the night, it doesn't matter how still the mind becomes, something within remains tight. These 4 abodes act as emotional medicine, each serving as an antidote to a specific kind of imbalance. Practiced properly, they harmonize the internal field and make the body-mind system naturally incline toward peace. The first is loving kindness, or metta. This is the simple but powerful intention. May all beings be happy. Before bed, this phrase becomes more than a mantra. It becomes a way to review the day through a lens of generosity. Where did kindness arise naturally? Where was it withheld? Instead of criticizing, this reflection becomes a reset. You cultivate the wish for happiness not only for others, but for yourself. This is important because many people lie in bed judging themselves, reliving mistakes, questioning their worth. Metta gently dissolves that, not by affirming false perfection, but by reminding the heart that even with flaws, happiness is a worthy wish. This softens self-criticism and creates the emotional openness that invites sleep to arise naturally. Compassion or karuna is the next doorway. Where loving kindness wishes well, compassion feels the suffering in oneself and others and meets it with care. Before sleep, this becomes essential. Unprocessed sorrow often lies beneath restlessness. It hides in the background, waiting for the quiet of night to surface. The practice of compassion is not about fixing that suffering, it's about turning toward it. You acknowledge the pain in your own body, the pain in the world, and you let the heart respond with care instead of resistance. The simple reflection, "May those who suffer be free from pain," held sincerely, allows grief to soften. It creates an emotional holding environment where nothing is denied, but everything is met. And when suffering is seen without fear, it begins to release its grip. The breath deepens, the body lets go, and sleep comes not by force, but by emotional readiness. The third Brahma Vihara is sympathetic joy, or mudita. This is the ability to feel happiness not from your own achievements, but from the success and joy of others. For many people, subtle forms of comparison and resentment keep the emotional body tense. Even small thoughts, "Why did they succeed while I struggle? Why don't I have what they have?" can leave an emotional residue that follows you into bed. Mudita is the antidote. It trains the heart to rejoice in others' well-being. This doesn't mean pretending or denying your own desires. It means recognizing that someone else's joy doesn't threaten your worth. Practicing this before sleep, perhaps by recalling something beautiful that happened to someone else and allowing yourself to feel happy for them, clears emotional tightness. It replaces contraction with expansion, and the heart, when expanded, rests more easily. Equinimity, or upekkha, is the final and perhaps the most stabilizing of the four. While the other Brahma Viharas open the heart, equanimity gives it grounding. It is the wisdom that sees all things as part of a larger flow, that understands joy and sorrow as conditions, not permanent truths. Before bed, this quality is essential. Without equanimity, the mind clings, even to good intentions. It wants to solve everything tonight. It wants to know how things will unfold. Equanimity says, "Let it be. Let joy be joy. Let pain be pain. Let this moment be enough." It does not harden the heart. It simply holds all emotions with equal care. The phrase, "all beings are the owners of their karma," serves as a gentle reminder that you do not control everything, nor do you need to. This brings a deep, silent relief. The nervous system settles, the emotional waves even out, and sleep becomes effortless. Each of these qualities can be practiced on its own, but their real power is in their integration. They are not separate paths. They support and balance each other. Loving kindness prevents compassion from becoming too heavy. Compassion prevents joy from becoming superficial. Joy prevents equanimity from becoming cold. And equanimity holds them all in balance. As a pre-sleep practice, moving through each of these qualities in a short reflection or meditation can recalibrate your entire emotional state. For example, you might begin by resting your attention in the heart and silently repeating, "May I be happy." You let that wish be felt, not as pressure, but as a gentle offering. You expand it to others. May all beings be happy. Then you turn to suffering, acknowledging it quietly. May I be free from pain. May those who are hurting find peace. From there you shift to joy. May I celebrate the good in others. May I find delight in their happiness. And finally, you rest in the quiet strength of equanimity. Things are as they are. I let go of what I cannot control. This flow, done slowly, allows the heart to return to a natural rhythm, neither clinging nor resisting, just present and open. The effects of this practice extend beyond sleep. Over time, it changes the tone of your inner world. You become less reactive, less judgmental, more resilient. The heart becomes a place of refuge, not conflict. And when the heart is a safe place, the body relaxes more deeply, dreams become lighter, waking feels less burdened. The day begins and ends with clarity. It's important to remember that this is not a performance. You don't have to feel these qualities perfectly. You practice them like tending a fire. Even a small flame gives light. Even a little warmth is enough to begin the transformation. The key is sincerity. You don't pretend to feel joy or compassion. You open the door to them. You invite them in, knowing that just the invitation begins to change the emotional climate. Some nights, the heart may resist. You may feel numb or overwhelmed. That's okay. The practice remains the same. You show up. You offer the phrases. You listen to what arises. You respond with gentleness. And you trust that even when the mind is tired and the heart feels far from peaceful, this effort matters. It's not about achieving a state. It's about remembering your direction. The Brahma Viharas are not complicated, but their simplicity is powerful. They return us to what matters: connection, care, joy, and balance. These are the emotions that support healthy sleep, not because they numb us, but because they restore us. They make space inside. They let the body stop defending itself. They remind the mind that it does not need to solve everything tonight. So, when you next prepare for sleep, take a few moments with your breath. Let the day soften, and then gently move through these 4 doors of the heart. Loving kindness for warmth, compassion for healing, sympathetic joy for lightness, equanimity for steadiness. Let them carry you, let them hold you, and in that holding the body releases its armor. The mind drops its stories, and sleep becomes not just possible, but natural. A return not only to rest, but to wholeness. As the Brahma Viharas settle the emotional landscape and bring the heart into balance, something deeper begins to rise in the silence that follows. You may feel the warmth of loving kindness, the stability of equanimity, the glow of sympathetic joy. But then, just as the body relaxes and sleep begins to approach, a different kind of energy appears. It comes not in the form of thought or memory, but as an unease, a sudden spike of fear, a sense of being watched, a wave of panic with no clear cause. Sleep becomes distant again. Calm gives way to tension. The mind feels under siege. This isn't just stress. This is the archetype of Mara making its appearance. In Buddhist psychology, Mara is not simply a figure from myth. He is the personification of internal disturbance. The forces of fear, craving, delusion, doubt, and despair, all seen as aspects of Mara, arise not only during meditation or spiritual practice, but most vividly in the vulnerable hours of the night. When light is gone and silence has taken hold, the deeper layers of the mind become visible. And Mara, in this context, is the name we give to the energies that try to pull us away from clarity, from stillness, from insight. Night terrors, insomnia, racing thoughts, and unexplainable anxiety that creeps in as sleep draws near are often seen as psychological disturbances. But from a Buddhist lens, these can be understood more symbolically. They are not random. They are patterns. They are expressions of resistance, not to sleep itself, but to the surrender that sleep requires. Because to sleep well, the self must soften, control must be released, the body must be trusted, and for a mind still under the influence of fear or past wounding, that surrender can feel dangerous. This is where Mara enters, not as a demon outside of you, but as the mental habits that keep fear alive. His voice might say, "You're not safe. What if you can't sleep again? Something is wrong." These thoughts trigger the body's defense system. The heartbeat rises, breath shortens, muscles tighten, and the cycle of insomnia begins, not from fatigue, but from psychological resistance. Recognizing Mara in these moments is the first step toward liberation, because what you recognize, you no longer believe blindly. The Buddha himself faced Mara under the Bodhi tree on the night of his awakening. He did not fight. He did not run. He simply sat with unwavering presence. Mara brought every fear, every distraction, every temptation. The Buddha responded with mindfulness and equanimity. "I see you, Mara," he said. That phrase is the essence of this practice. You see what arises, and in seeing clearly, the grip begins to loosen. When insomnia or night fears appear, instead of seeing them as problems to be fixed, you can begin to approach them as visitors. Ask, what energy is here right now? Is it fear of not being in control? Is it anxiety about something unresolved? Is it a deep feeling of unworthiness? Whatever it is, turn toward it. Stay connected to the breath. Notice how the fear moves in the body. Feel where it lives. Is it tightness in the chest? Tension in the throat? Don't analyze it. Don't argue with it. Simply say, "I see you." That acknowledgement weakens Mara's power. Often, night terrors are tied to unprocessed memories or subconscious trauma. They rise in sleep because that is when the cognitive mind lets go. And Mara uses this opening. He amplifies what has not yet been met with compassion, but again, the solution is not suppression, it's awareness. If a nightmare wakes you, instead of resisting the fear, sit with it. Breathe into it. Ask the body what it needs. Often, just by naming what happened, that was fear, that was helplessness. You create space. And in that space, healing begins. Another manifestation of Mara is doubt. At night, the mind becomes very clever. It begins to question everything. Why am I not healed yet? Is this practice working? What if I'm doing it wrong? These thoughts don't help. They tighten the mind. They pull you into spirals. But when you see them as doubt rather than truth, something shifts. You remember that Mara is tricky. His power comes from appearing real, but doubt is only thought, not fact, not prophecy, just a passing mental event. The body, too, is affected by these energies. Mara doesn't only appear in the mind. He shows up as restlessness, twitching, sudden heat, or a sensation of being unable to settle. These are somatic echoes of unresolved fear. The body remembers what the mind has buried, so instead of fighting these sensations, treat them as messengers. You can use gentle body awareness, scanning from head to toe, slowly softening each area. Let the body feel your attention. Let it know it's being listened to. This level of presence weakens Mara's influence. The body responds to kindness more than control. There's also a more subtle way Mara operates, through false urgency. The mind suddenly believes something must be done right now. A message to send, a task to complete, a decision to make. This is illusion. At night, this urgency is rarely true. It is the nervous system, triggered by the undercurrent of Mara's presence, trying to restore control. You must remember, urgency is a trick. The truth of the moment is rest. You are not required to solve everything before sleep. You are allowed to put it down. Some practitioners find it helpful to set a boundary with Mara. This is not repression, it's clarity. You can say, silently or aloud, "Not now. This is not the time. You will not guide me tonight." This act of setting intention helps the subconscious rewire itself. Over time, it learns that night is for healing, not struggle. The role of compassion in facing Mara cannot be overstated. When fear arises, it's tempting to blame yourself, to think you are broken or weak. But this only strengthens the cycle. Compassion says, "Of course, fear is here. The world is difficult. Life has been uncertain. This compassion must be real. You are not being indulgent. You are meeting the wounded places inside you that have never known safety. That meeting is what Mara cannot survive." Breathwork can also support this process. Long, slow exhales activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Breathing in for 4 counts, holding briefly, and exhaling for 6 to 8 counts can bring immediate calm. When fear rises, do not try to force it away with thought. Bring attention to the breath. Feel it as an anchor. Let the rhythm soothe the storm. The body listens to breath more deeply than it listens to logic. Mantra can also help. Simple phrases like, "This too shall pass," or "I am here, I am safe," repeated gently in rhythm with the breath, offer stability. They are like lanterns in the dark, small lights that guide the mind back to presence. These words are not meant to overpower fear, but to walk beside it. Over time, the presence of Mara becomes less threatening. You see the pattern, you understand the trick, and you stop reacting. Another layer of practice is to reflect on impermanence. Nothing that arises in the night is permanent. No fear lasts forever. no emotion, no thought, no image. All of it is movement. When you stop trying to escape it and begin to watch it, you remember that you are not the content of your mind. You are the awareness that sees it. This changes everything. Overcoming Mara is not about eliminating fear. It's about ending identification with it. When you wake in the night with your heart racing and thoughts spinning, you don't have to become the one who is panicked. You can become the one who notices, the one who breathes, the one who stays. With consistent practice, this changes the sleep cycle. The mind no longer fears the night. The body no longer resists rest. Even if disturbances arise, they no longer have the same power. You know the territory. You recognize the pattern. You meet it with calm. And in that calm, Mara fades. Not because you defeated him, but because you saw through him. This is the essence of liberation, not the absence of fear, but the freedom from being ruled by it. Sleep, then, becomes sacred again, not just unconsciousness, but a return to trust, a letting go that is full of presence, a descent not into darkness, but into rest that knows how to hold even the shadows without being shaken. This is your power, not to avoid Mara, but to look him in the eye, and to say with all the strength of your silent awareness, I see you, and I'm not leaving. After witnessing Mara with calm attention and not turning away, the heart gains something subtle but important: confidence. Not in the sense of control, but in the trust that you no longer need to run. Even when fear rises, even when the mind tightens or the body resists, you know now that presence is enough. But what allows presence to move from something reactive to something intentional is the skillful blending of awareness with understanding. In Buddhism, this is referred to as sati sampajanya, mindfulness paired with clear comprehension. This twofold awareness is not only central to practice during the day, but it becomes especially powerful when applied during the delicate transition between wakefulness and sleep. Often, mindfulness is misunderstood as merely being aware of the present moment. But sati on its own is only part of the picture. It means memory, or the ability to keep the object of meditation present in the mind. What gives mindfulness depth is sampajanya, the clear knowing of what is happening, why it is happening, and whether it serves the path toward peace. When both are active, the mind does not just observe, it understands. And this understanding is what refines awareness into wisdom. Without this, even well-practiced mindfulness can become mechanical. With it, awareness becomes intelligent, fluid, and able to respond wisely to every shift in inner and outer conditions. When applied to sleep preparation, this integration of mindfulness and clear comprehension transforms routine into ritual and reaction into refinement. You are no longer just trying to fall asleep. You are learning how to consciously enter rest, not through effort, but through understanding what the body and mind need moment by moment. Instead of rushing to complete tasks and suddenly expecting the nervous system to shut down, you begin to see the entire evening as a descent, a gradual unwinding, guided by attention and insight. This begins by observing transitions. The moment you stop working, the shift from conversation to quiet, the change in lighting, the feeling of closing a door. Each of these small events is a threshold, Most people pass through them without noticing, but with sati sampajanya, these are seen as opportunities to tune in. You start asking with every action, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What state of mind is present? This doesn't create tension. It cultivates intimacy. You become a careful steward of your own mind state, gently guiding it towards stillness. Even physical actions, like brushing your teeth, turning off lights, folding clothing, can become practices. Not in a forced way, but as points of contact with the body and breath. You begin to use these moments to center attention and bring kindness into motion. As you move, you are not just completing tasks, you are caring for the conditions that make rest possible. You are meeting each step with clarity. Not only am I brushing my teeth, I am preparing this body for recovery. Not only am I turning down the bed, I am signaling to the nervous system that the day is complete. This shifts the tone of the evening entirely. Instead of chasing relaxation, you are preparing space for it to emerge naturally. Mindfulness without comprehension might simply register that you are tired. But with comprehension, you ask, what kind of tiredness is this? Is it physical fatigue, emotional drain, mental overload? Each requires a different kind of care. The body might need gentle stretching. The heart might need to release tension through journaling or quiet reflection. The mind might need a simple focus, like breath or mantra, to help settle its loops. The more clearly you understand what is present, the more precisely you can respond. Mindfulness is also brought to thoughts, not to stop them, but to know them clearly. The goal is not a blank mind, but an informed one. As thoughts arise, you ask, is this useful right now? Is it a review, a regret, a plan? Does it bring peace or tension? You don't have to analyze every thought. But just by recognizing the flavor of the thought, you begin to see which ones arise from habit and which come from clarity. This recognition naturally slows the mind, not through suppression, but through wisdom. The mind starts to let go because it sees the futility of holding on. This also applies to emotion. When you lie down and feel something unresolved, Sati Sampajanya invites you to name it gently. Sadness, excitement, worry. You don't push it away, you greet it. You ask, is this emotion trying to protect something? Is it asking for attention or care? This simple inquiry brings compassion, and compassion brings space. Often, the emotion doesn't need to be resolved. It just needs to be seen clearly, without judgment. When seen in this way, even strong emotions begin to settle. Breath becomes a central tool in this process, not as an object to manipulate, but as a mirror. You observe, is the breath short, shallow, restless? You don't force it to change, you stay with it. And, as attention deepens, the breath shifts naturally. It lengthens, it softens, it begins to guide the body into parasympathetic rest. This is where mindfulness and comprehension merge fully. You are not merely watching the breath, you are using its signals to understand your inner state. And through that understanding, the body moves toward ease. This quality of attention can also be directed to the environment. You notice, is the room too bright, too cluttered, too cold? Sampajanya sees that conditions matter. Sleep is not just a personal achievement. It is supported or disturbed by what surrounds us. Creating a space of rest is part of the practice, not for perfection, but for alignment. The outer world should reflect the stillness you are cultivating inside. Even small acts, closing a curtain, dimming a lamp, removing distractions, become acts of kindness. You are not just making the room comfortable. You are creating an atmosphere of respect for rest. As you lie down, the practice doesn't stop. You continue to feel the body. You check in. Is there tension in the face, in the belly, in the legs? You let go with each exhale. You do not fight wakefulness. You do not resist discomfort. You stay with it. You notice there is tightness here. And with that noticing, the body begins to release. When the mind drifts, you notice thinking and gently return, not to control sleep, but to stay close to presence until sleep arrives on its own. Eventually, awareness may dissolve into rest, or it may remain lightly present as you drift. Either is fine. The point is not to force any outcome, but to care for the conditions, to guide the mind gently to the edge, and then let go. This letting go, when done with clarity, feels like floating, like handing yourself over to something larger, not as surrender in defeat, but as surrender in trust. Over time, this changes your relationship to sleep entirely. It is no longer a fight. It is no longer a goal. It becomes part of the path. Each night is a chance to meet yourself honestly, to learn what is unsettled, what is peaceful, what is changing. And this learning happens not through analysis, but through simple moment-to-moment knowing. Even waking in the night becomes practice. You notice, I'm awake. You check in. What is here? You do not panic. You return to breath. You return to the body. You rest in the clarity that even wakefulness can be calm. The mind learns that it is not the enemy of sleep. It is the vehicle through which sleep arrives when treated with patience and understanding. This practice does not require special conditions. It only asks for sincerity and consistency. The more often you meet your evenings with awareness and comprehension, the more your nervous system begins to trust the process. It starts to recognize the signs. This is the time for letting go. This is the place for rest. With time, even your dreams change. The subconscious recognizes the presence you bring. The themes of control, fear, or avoidance lose power. The emotional field lightens. The inner dialogue becomes kinder. This is not magic. It is the fruit of steady attention, of learning to meet yourself fully, without pressure or judgment. Sati Sampajanya is not something to master. It is something to return to, breath by breath, step by step, night by night, until even sleep becomes part of the path. Not a pause from practice, but a continuation of it. A space where awareness deepens not through effort, but through trust. And in that trust, the mind settles, the heart steadies, and the body finally, quietly, finds its way home. As Sati Sampajanya helps us enter sleep with clarity and gentle understanding, a deeper question often starts to surface. If we can bring awareness and intention to the threshold of rest, what would it look like to sleep without the pull of grasping, without the push of fear, without the ongoing drama of becoming? What would rest feel like for someone who has fully let go, not temporarily, but completely? In the Buddhist tradition, that person is the Arahant, one who has uprooted all defilements and lives in unwavering equanimity. Although the texts do not dwell extensively on how an arahant sleeps, they offer enough glimpses to inspire deep reflection. Exploring the nature of enlightened rest is not about perfection. It is about learning how to let go more fully, night by night. The arahant, by definition, no longer clings to self-view. There is no identity to defend, no past to regret, no future to chase. From this space of non-attachment, even the act of sleeping changes. It is no longer a collapse into exhaustion or an escape from pain. It becomes a simple movement of nature, a body resting when tired, waking when refreshed. There is no struggle, no mental resistance. The mind of an arahant does not churn with unfinished business. There is no inner monologue reviewing mistakes or planning conversations. This is not because nothing happens in their day, but because nothing sticks. Events are seen as impermanent flows, not as personal burdens. And when there is nothing to carry, rest becomes immediate. In the discourses, the Buddha describes arahants as having a mind like a clear, still lake. Thoughts may ripple the surface, but they do not disturb the depth. This metaphor is deeply relevant to sleep. For most people, rest is delayed not by physical tiredness, but by emotional noise. The lake is stirred by desires, fears, memories. The arahant, however, rests in awareness itself. Sleep arises naturally, just as hunger does, without craving or resistance. The body is not forced into submission. It is simply allowed to follow its rhythm. There is also a quality of sufficiency in the arahant's rest. Since they do not seek pleasure in sleep, they do not indulge in it. They rest only as needed. In the texts, the Buddha mentions sleeping briefly, waking early, often spending hours of the night in meditation. This does not reflect effort, but freedom. When the mind is not weighed down by delusion or inner conflict, it requires less unconscious processing. Dreams, if they arise at all, are not agitated or symbolic. They are neutral, reflecting a mind that is neither hiding from nor grasping at anything. For most of us, emulating this kind of rest begins not with trying to mimic behavior, but with observing intention. What drives our relationship with sleep? Is it fear of fatigue? Is it attachment to comfort? Is it escape from emotional discomfort? The arahant teaches us that when motivation is free from clinging, rest becomes simple. The challenge, then, is not in fixing sleep, but in loosening the attachments around it. We can begin by softening the craving for perfect sleep, the desire to control outcomes, the fear that a restless night means something is wrong. Even this gentle shift begins to open the door to deeper rest. Another key lesson from the arahant is emotional release. Enlightened beings do not suppress their emotions. They have simply uprooted the conditions that feed reactivity. For most people, emotional residue is what prevents deep sleep. Guilt, anger, longing, these bind the mind to cycles of rethinking. But through the practice of mindfulness, loving kindness, and honest reflection, these knots can be loosened. A person who ends their day with forgiveness, humility, and gratitude will sleep closer to the way an arahant sleeps, not because they've attained enlightenment, but because they have reduced friction. The arahant also brings a unique relationship to the body. Without identification, the body is seen as a vehicle, respected but not worshipped. Sleep is given to the body when needed, not demanded as entitlement. This approach shifts our mindset from needing comfort to allowing rest. It removes the urgency. There is no mental tantrum when sleep is delayed. The arahant does not argue with reality. If wakefulness persists, it is simply observed. If drowsiness comes, it is honored without attachment. This kind of detachment is not cold. It is warm, quiet, and rooted in truth. Arahants are not disconnected from life. They are deeply in tune with it. Their rest mirrors that attunement. Their sleep is not heavy with mental residue. It is light, natural, and clear. Even the transition into sleep holds no drama. They are not seeking to forget the world. They are simply moving into a different state of being with full awareness. This awareness remains even during rest. Some advanced meditators report that as the mind becomes more purified, awareness continues in sleep, like a flame that remains lit, even in darkness. This is not the same as lucid dreaming or sleep disruption. It is a subtle presence, a knowing that remains without interference. The arahant may not cling to consciousness, but they also do not lose it in delusion. This continuity of awareness creates a seamless flow between waking and sleeping. The boundary is not rigid. Rest becomes part of practice. From this perspective, we can approach sleep as a training ground, not as a passive end to the day, but as a continuation of insight. Each night is an opportunity to meet the conditions of the mind with kindness and clarity. Each difficulty, racing thoughts, emotional heaviness, restlessness, becomes a chance to see where clinging remains. The more we practice this, the more the mind begins to resemble that clear lake. Thoughts may arise, but they no longer pull us into story. Emotions pass through, but they do not shake the foundation. This doesn't mean we become detached from life. It means we become less entangled. We sleep not as a reward for achievement, but as a function of balance. Our rest becomes more peaceful, not by accident, but through alignment. With less inner noise, the body sleeps more deeply. With less grasping, the mind rests more fully. It is also important to acknowledge that arahants do not judge the process. If sleep is disturbed, they do not create narrative. If the body is tired, they do not add resistance. This non-judgment is central. Most sleep problems are made worse by the stories we add. I can't sleep again. Tomorrow will be ruined. There must be something wrong. The arahant's mind is free from these overlays. They see what is, and they let it be. This is the essence of emotional detachment, not distance, but freedom. Even for those of us still on the path, this lesson can be deeply healing. You do not need to be free of all defilements to rest with a peaceful mind. You only need to stop feeding the ones that arise. When you lie down, you can say inwardly, "There is nothing to do now." Let this moment be enough. These are not affirmations. They are reminders. The mind does not need more information. It needs permission to let go. And as this letting go becomes familiar, sleep no longer feels like falling. It feels like resting back into something that has always held you. A space beyond effort, beyond identity. A space that the arahant recognizes not as escape, but as part of the same silence that pervades all states of being. What we learn from the arahant is not a technique. It is a way of relating to life and rest with the same gentle detachment. It is a posture of surrender, rooted in deep understanding. Sleep, like everything else, is conditioned. It arises and passes. What remains is not the experience, but the awareness that receives it. That awareness is the real refuge. And in that refuge, the heart no longer struggles. It simply rests. As the stillness of the Arahant's rest dissolves the boundary between waking and sleeping, another dimension of the path reveals itself. One that doesn't begin or end with the rising and falling of breath, but continues into the subtle spaces where the conscious mind no longer holds control. If waking life can be used for mindfulness, what about dreams? If the enlightened rest without clinging, what does that teach us about the content that continues when we sleep? These questions point to a deeper exploration of the sleeping mind, not as a passive process, but as fertile ground for insight. Vipassana, the practice of insight meditation, offers a powerful lens through which to observe not only waking experience, but the dream state as well. Through this lens, even dreams become part of the path, rich with opportunities to see clearly the nature of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. Dreams are not random. They are structured by the same conditions that shape waking experience: perceptions, memories, habits, and emotions. But unlike in daily life, these mental events appear without the normal constraints of logic or physical context. They emerge freely, revealing how deeply the mind clings to form, identity, and control. In this way, dreams can be seen as distilled mental activity, offering insight into the subconscious patterns we might not notice during the day. This does not mean every dream needs to be interpreted, but it does suggest that when we bring a Vipassana perspective into sleep, we begin to relate to these internal experiences with curiosity and wisdom rather than confusion or aversion. The foundation of Vipassana is direct observation. The meditator watches the body, thoughts, and emotions as they arise and pass. The emphasis is on seeing clearly, not changing the content. When applied to dreams, this attitude becomes invaluable. Instead of getting caught in the narrative of a dream or trying to assign it meaning, we observe the nature of the experience itself. Was there craving in the dream? Was there aversion? Did the self appear as solid, threatened, or inflated? These are not questions of interpretation, but of recognition. They bring mindfulness into the subconscious by highlighting how the same mental habits continue in altered states. Many people find that strong emotions appear more vividly in dreams than they do while awake. Unresolved fear, jealousy, or longing often return in symbolic form. These are not signs of failure, they are opportunities. Insight practice teaches us that emotional energy persists when it hasn't been fully seen. Dreams give us a second chance to recognize this energy, to meet it without judgment, and to understand its nature. When you wake from a dream that left a strong impression, pause and bring mindful attention to what remains. Notice the emotional residue in the body. Is there tightness? Is there sadness? Is there confusion? Stay with the feeling without trying to solve it. Just observe. In that observation, clarity begins to form. Clarity doesn't mean explanation. The insight here is not about discovering what a dream means in a psychological sense. It's about seeing how all phenomena, whether in sleep or wakefulness, arise based on causes and conditions, and then pass. The images may seem personal, but the process is universal. This is where the non-self teaching becomes directly observable. You begin to notice that the you in dreams is not fixed. Sometimes you appear as yourself, sometimes as a stranger. Sometimes you watch the scene unfold with no character at all. This fluidity is not just a quirk of dreaming, it is a reflection of how identity itself is constructed and deconstructed moment by moment. Practicing insight in relation to dreams starts with refining mindfulness during the day. When the mind becomes familiar with watching thoughts and emotions without attachment while awake, it carries that habit into sleep. The clearer the mindfulness, the more likely it is that awareness will remain present during and after dreams. This continuity allows you to reflect without being overwhelmed. You might not become lucid, but you develop the ability to recall the dream with calm and discernment. You see how grasping shows up, how fear constructs narrative, how comparison plays out. Each of these is an insight, a direct encounter with how suffering is formed and sustained. Over time, some practitioners find that dream content becomes more transparent. The scenes become less emotionally sticky. They may still arise, but they do not linger. This mirrors what happens in meditation as the mind purifies. Thoughts still occur, but they lose their charge. Emotions still arise, but they pass more quickly. This lightness in dreams is a sign that deeper layers of conditioning are being released. It is not that dreams disappear, but that their ability to trap you in reactivity begins to dissolve. One effective way to support this unfolding is by setting intention before sleep. This is not the same as trying to control dreams. It is more like planting a seed. You can say inwardly, "May I see clearly, even in dreams," or "May I observe whatever arises with wisdom." These intentions gently guide the subconscious mind. They don't force awareness, but they shape the orientation. The more you incline toward insight, the more the dream space responds. You begin to notice themes not as puzzles, but as patterns. This noticing itself is the beginning of freedom. Journaling upon waking can also support Vipassana practice, not by analyzing dreams in detail, but by noting recurring emotions, reactions, and identities. Was there attachment? Did the mind cling to an outcome? Was there fear of losing something? These reflections help connect the dream state with waking mindfulness. They reveal the continuity of consciousness and the persistence of unexamined tendencies. This is not a burdensome task. It is an act of compassionate curiosity. You are not trying to fix the dream. You are learning how to know your mind more deeply. In rare cases, practitioners may experience heightened awareness within dreams. These moments of clarity, sometimes mistaken for lucid dreaming, are not about control. In the Vipassana context, they are simply another form of seeing. You realize the dream is happening, and you stay present with it. You don't interfere, but you observe. The same way you might watch a breath or a thought during sitting meditation, you now watch the unfolding of the dream. This can be deeply transformative, not because the content is extraordinary, but because the relationship with the content is different. You are no longer a character inside the story. You are the observer of the process. Even without full awareness in dreams, the way you relate to them can evolve. Fear no longer dominates. Craving loses its urgency. The dream becomes a field of study, a space where the Dharma expresses itself in subtle form. And this reinforces something powerful, that the practice does not stop when the eyes close. That insight is not limited to formal meditation, that the truth of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self can be seen in all states of consciousness. One of the deeper shifts that occurs through this integration is the realization that dreams are not separate from life. The same mind that creates thoughts and emotions while awake is active during sleep. The same habits that color perception during the day also influence what appears in the night. When you begin to observe this, a natural humility arises. You see how powerful habit energy is. You also see that awareness is the only reliable refuge, not just when things are peaceful, but even in the middle of chaos, whether it's in a meeting, an argument, or a nightmare. This understanding deepens your relationship to rest. You no longer see sleep as unconscious downtime. You see it as part of the path. Not because you are trying to achieve something in sleep, but because you are learning to bring awareness to all conditions. You are learning to release identification not only with thoughts and feelings, but with the very idea of a self that experiences them. This insight, born slowly and quietly through practice, is what leads to liberation, not from dreaming, but from believing that what arises in the mind is who you are. In the end, Vipassana dreams are not a technique. They are a natural extension of clear seeing. When you train the mind to observe with precision and kindness during the day, it begins to watch itself at night. When you learn not to cling to stories in waking life, the dream stories lose their grip. And when you remember, again and again, that everything you experience is impermanent, not satisfying, and not self, you begin to rest more deeply, not only in bed, but in your being. This is how the insight path flows, quietly, steadily, across waking and sleeping, thought and silence, movement and stillness. And as that flow continues, the line between meditation and life dissolves. Awareness becomes your ground, and in that ground, everything that arises, dreams, fears, longings, memories, can be held, observed, and let go. Not because they stop appearing, but because you no longer need them to define who you are. As the practice of Vipassana begins to extend beyond the cushion and into the depths of sleep, it becomes clear that the boundaries between waking and dreaming, consciousness and unconsciousness, are not as fixed as they once seemed. The mind, in its habits, follows a continuous thread through thought, perception, emotion, and memory, regardless of whether the eyes are open or closed. And with this realization comes a deeper curiosity. What if sleep itself, the act of letting go into the unknown, mirrors something even more fundamental about our existence? In Buddhist thought, the cycle of samsara, the endless round of birth, death, and rebirth, offers a profound metaphor for understanding the nightly descent into sleep and the return to waking life. This is not merely poetic. The teachings speak to a continuous arising and passing of mental and physical phenomena. Moment by moment, consciousness is reborn through contact with objects, feelings, and ideas. In every experience, something ends and something begins, and this rhythm is echoed each night when the familiar self dissolves into sleep and reappears, freshly constructed, in the morning. The comparison to birth and death is not exaggerated. Both involve transitions into the unknown. Both require surrender, and both reveal the impermanent, fragile nature of what we call identity. Sleep, like death, requires the release of control. The mind, so used to grasping, must let go. The body must soften. Thought must fade. But this surrender rarely happens easily. For many people, the moment before sleep is filled with resistance, anxiety, fear, clinging to what happened during the day, dread about what might come tomorrow. All of this mirrors the grasping that arises in the face of death, the fear of letting go, of disappearing, of not knowing what comes next. In this way, every night offers a kind of training, a gentle opportunity to face impermanence without violence or panic. Understanding sleep through the lens of samsara helps shift our attitude. Instead of seeing rest as a pause in productivity or a temporary shutdown, we begin to approach it as a sacred transition. The day ends, and with it, a version of the self dies. The roles you played, the plans you held, the emotions you carried, they dissolve. You do not carry your social mask into deep sleep. You do not bring your possessions or your status. What remains is only the trace of consciousness released from identity, floating in the unknown. And in the morning, a new self is born. Not a replica, but a continuation, conditioned by memory, yes, but also touched by the stillness of what came before. This process, when viewed with awareness, becomes a kind of meditation in itself. Each night is an invitation to practice non-attachment, to let the constructed self fall away without fear, to trust the natural rhythm of arising and passing. And each morning is an invitation to start again, not from scratch, but from clarity. The insight here is not abstract, it becomes embodied. You begin to notice how clinging at bedtime leads to restlessness, how the desire to control the transition delays it, how fear of losing the self through unconsciousness, through not waking, through being forgotten, feeds the mind with subtle anxiety. Buddhist teachings describe the moment of death as one of great importance. The mind that is present at death determines the next rebirth. In this view, the final moment of each day also becomes important, not in the metaphysical sense, but as a reflection of your internal training. What mind state are you cultivating as you fall asleep? Is it grasping? Is it regret? Is it peace? These moments matter. They condition how deeply the body rests and how the mind reorganizes itself overnight. This leads to the practice of ending each day with intention. Before sleep, reflect not just on what happened, but on how you meet this ending. You can bring to mind the day as a complete chapter, grateful for its lessons, forgiving of its imperfections, and ready to release it. This is not indulgent, it is practical. A mind that ends the day with closure does not need to loop in the night. Emotional fragments begin to settle. Mental tensions relax. The inner system recognizes that nothing more needs to be done. This practice can be enhanced with a simple phrase, "This day is complete." When spoken with sincerity, it marks the boundary. It lets the mind know it can let go. You are not ignoring your responsibilities or abandoning your path. You are trusting the wisdom of rest. You are aligning with a truth the body already knows, that recovery is not optional but essential, and that letting go is not defeat, but skillful means. Understanding the cycle of samsara also helps us relate to sleep interruptions differently. When you wake in the night, you can see it not as a failure, but as another moment in the cycle, another birth. You are present again, not to panic, but to observe, to breathe, to meet what is there. And when sleep returns, you are reborn once more into the quiet. This shifts your identity away from the story of "I can't sleep" and toward the recognition that rest is fluid, not linear. That waking and sleeping are not opposites, but companions. This perspective also encourages humility. Just as we cannot fully control the circumstances of our birth or the exact moment of our death, we cannot always dictate when or how we fall asleep. The illusion of control must be softened. When sleep becomes difficult, rather than forcing the process, you can practice surrender. You accept the moment as it is, knowing that each part of the cycle is valid. Whether you are drifting, dreaming, or lying awake, all of it is part of the same flow. In this space, even discomfort becomes workable. Aches, thoughts, emotions, none of them need to be obstacles. They can be seen as conditions, arising and passing within the larger rhythm. And as you begin to see this, compassion arises. For yourself, for others, for the human condition. Everyone sleeps, everyone struggles with letting go. Everyone faces the unknown each night, whether they admit it or not. This insight connects you to something universal. The nightly cycle of sleep is shared by all beings, animals, humans, young and old. Each night, a tiny death. Each morning, a new life. And within that rhythm lies the path to wisdom, not by avoiding the darkness, but by entering it with awareness, not by escaping the self, but by seeing that the self is not fixed, not solid, not permanent. This recognition allows you to relax more deeply. The fear of disappearing begins to lose power. The need to grasp begins to weaken. You no longer fight sleep, you enter it. You no longer wake with resistance, you return. And this flow begins to inform not just how you rest, but how you live. You carry less into each day. You release more at the end of each night. In this way, the metaphor of rebirth becomes practical. It becomes something you feel, not just a belief, but a living truth. The cycle of samsara is not somewhere far away. It is right here, in the unfolding of your own breath, your own heart, your own mind. Every night you practice dying. Every morning you begin again. And through that practice, wisdom deepens. This is not meant to add pressure. You are not being asked to perfect the night. You are being invited to see it clearly, to honor it, to use it, not only for rest, but for reflection, not only to reset the body, but to remember what is real. That clinging causes tension, that letting go brings peace, that each moment is precious, not because it is permanent, but because it is not. When this understanding touches your nightly routine, even small acts begin to feel sacred. Turning off the lights becomes a gesture of renunciation. Lying down becomes a bow to the truth of impermanence. Letting sleep come becomes a rehearsal for the deepest letting go of all. And through this, you begin to realize that rest is not the absence of doing. It is the fruit of understanding. Sleep is not just a necessity. It is a teacher. Each night, a reminder. Each dream, a mirror. Each awakening, a chance to begin again. Not to be reborn into struggle, but into freedom. Not to repeat the past, but to rest more deeply in the present. And not to fear the ending, but to recognize it as the beginning of peace. As we begin to view sleep through the lens of samsara, where each night is a letting go and each morning a rebirth, it becomes increasingly important to consider what we carry across that threshold. Every cycle of rest becomes an opportunity to release unwholesome patterns and to reinforce clarity. But what happens when the mind, even after a full day, still feels tangled in confusion? What if lingering doubts, unresolved opinions, or absorbed negativity cloud the space we're trying to surrender into? This is where ethics meets mindfulness, and it's where the Kalama Sutta offers powerful, practical guidance for cleansing the mind before sleep. The Kalama Sutta is often celebrated as a teaching on independent inquiry. The Buddha addressed a group of villagers, the Kalamas, who were confused by the conflicting teachings they had heard from various spiritual teachers. Instead of offering a dogma, the Buddha encouraged discernment. He said, "Don't believe something just because it's been repeated, written, or passed down. Don't accept it because it's said by someone you respect. Instead, look directly. Does it lead to harm or to benefit? Does it cultivate greed, hatred, or delusion? Or does it bring clarity, kindness, and peace?" When these teachings are applied before sleep, they act like an ethical filter, removing mental debris that would otherwise pollute rest. Each night, the mind carries impressions from the day, thoughts, judgments, moods, and narratives. Some uplift and steady the heart. Others disturb it. These mental residues are not always obvious. Many take the form of subtle assumptions or automatic beliefs we never stop to question. But when the day closes, the mind begins to process more freely, and these assumptions rise to the surface. This is why people often feel a surge of anxiety, restlessness, or internal noise just as they prepare to sleep. The Kalama Sutta provides a structure to investigate this inner material with wisdom instead of reaction. The first step is to observe what thoughts are present as the body prepares for rest. Instead of resisting the mental activity, begin to inquire gently. Where is this thought coming from? Is it rooted in fear, in craving, in comparison, or judgment? This inquiry doesn't require analysis. It asks for honesty. If a recurring thought is based on anxiety about performance, about being good enough, about needing to control the next day, it likely stems from views you've never consciously examined. The Kalama Sutta invites you to look at the effect of that belief, not whether it's true in a conventional sense, but whether it leads to inner peace or inner conflict. Beliefs shape sleep. If the mind holds on to views based in fear or resentment, those thoughts will continue spinning throughout the night. But when you use ethical discernment to see that a thought causes tension, you can begin to release it, not through force, but through understanding. For example, if you catch yourself revisiting a conflict with someone, you can ask, "Is this thought helping me rest? Is it rooted in kindness? Does it increase my clarity or my confusion?" If the answer points toward harm, you don't have to argue with the thought. You can simply label it as unhelpful and return to the breath. This is where the Kalama Sutta differs from blind positivity or mental suppression. It doesn't say, ignore negative thoughts. It says, Test them. Look at their consequences. Use your own direct experience as a guide. This turns sleep preparation into a form of ethical purification. Just as you might clean your body before bed, you begin cleaning your mind, not by judging what arises, but by sifting through it with discernment. What is true? What is helpful? What supports well-being? This process becomes more powerful when practiced consistently. As the day ends, take a few minutes to mentally review any strong opinions, judgments, or internal dialogues that formed during the day. Ask yourself, did I assume this because someone told me? Because I wanted it to be true? Because I feared the alternative? These are not questions designed to create doubt, but to open space for wisdom. The more clearly you see your mental habits, the less likely they are to dominate the sleeping mind. Another application of the Kalama Sutta is checking for borrowed beliefs. During the day, we absorb thoughts from news, social media, conversations, and cultural conditioning. Not all of it is helpful. Some of it is soaked in fear, anger, or delusion, and yet we take it in, hold it, and repeat it silently to ourselves without realizing it. Before sleep, it's important to pause and examine. What did I absorb today that isn't mine? What was passed along by others but doesn't align with what brings peace? Letting these beliefs go, even temporarily, frees mental space for true rest. This teaching also applies to self-view. Much of the mental noise before bed comes from inner criticism or expectation. The Kalama Sutta reminds us not to accept views of ourselves simply because they've been repeated in our own minds. Just because you've thought, "I'm not doing enough," every night for years doesn't mean it's true or useful. Ask instead, does this belief increase self-compassion? Does it help me grow without fear? If not, release it. Not because you're denying your challenges, but because you're learning to meet them from a place of truth rather than habit. There is also an emotional dimension to this inquiry. Unexamined beliefs often carry emotional charges. A belief about failure may come with shame. A belief about unfairness may carry resentment. These emotions are not problems. They are signals. Use them. When a feeling arises before bed, trace it back to the thought or belief behind it. What am I believing right now that is creating this tension? You might discover a hidden assumption that things must go a certain way, that you should be more advanced, that others should behave differently. As you bring these beliefs into awareness, don't argue with them. Test them. What is their effect on your peace? The more you practice this, the more intuitive it becomes. The Kalama Sutta isn't a list to memorize. It's a habit of mind, a way of relating to thoughts with a calm, ethical intelligence. Over time, the mind learns to do this naturally. Instead of getting lost in mental loops, it starts asking, is this true? Is this kind? Is this useful? And just like that, the momentum of suffering slows down. The emotional charge lessens. The inner environment becomes more spacious. This mental spaciousness is exactly what the nervous system needs to rest. When the mind is not filled with unresolved beliefs and emotional tension, the body feels safer. The breath deepens. The muscles relax. Sleep becomes easier. Not because the body is forced into stillness, but because the mind has stopped feeding the signals that keep it alert. This kind of ethical filtering can be practiced in many ways. Some may choose to journal, writing down a few recurring thoughts and asking, What is the real effect of this belief? Others might sit quietly for 5 minutes, just observing the content of the mind with this question in view. Some may find it helpful to speak aloud. This thought causes harm. I choose not to carry it into the night. However it's done, the intention is the same, to bring the mind into alignment with what leads to well-being, not what reinforces fear or attachment. And when practiced regularly, the benefits go beyond sleep. You begin to notice your thinking habits during the day. You catch reactive beliefs earlier. You learn to pause before adopting someone else's worldview. You stop mistaking familiarity for truth. This is the deeper gift of the Kalama Sutta. It teaches you how to trust your own clarity, your own experience, and your own ethical compass. So each night, before surrendering to rest, pause, breathe. Ask, what thoughts am I carrying into this darkness? Which ones are grounded in wisdom? Which ones are simply echoes? Begin to sort gently and clearly. Let go of what doesn't serve. Keep what aligns with kindness. And sleep knowing that your mind, like your body, has been cared for, cleaned, lightened, made ready for the unknown. In that preparation, the transition to sleep becomes more than physical. It becomes moral, emotional, spiritual. You're not just lying down, you're stepping across a threshold with clarity, and that clarity, built on the foundation of direct inquiry and ethical discernment, becomes the quiet light that follows you into the dark, where fear fades, where truth settles, and where the mind, at last, can rest. As the Kalama Sutta teaches us to sift through the mind's contents with ethical clarity, what remains afterward is not just insight, but a natural humility. When we let go of beliefs that cause harm and choose only what supports peace, the inner posture begins to soften. There's less grasping, less insistence, less pride. But even as we apply discernment, the deeper layers of identity, those wrapped in the need to control or prove, can still linger in the background. These subtle habits don't always respond to reasoning. They require something more embodied, more symbolic, and more deeply human. This is where ritual becomes essential. And one of the most powerful yet overlooked rituals for dissolving inner resistance is the simple act of bowing. Bowing is not merely a cultural gesture. In Buddhist tradition, it is an act of surrender, not submission to another person, but surrender to truth. It is the body's way of expressing what the mind has seen, that clinging causes suffering, that the ego is not the center of the universe, that peace comes through letting go. Bowing, especially when done with full awareness, shifts the emotional tone of the moment. It physically lowers the head and raises the heart. It reminds the nervous system that it is safe to release. When practiced before sleep, bowing serves as a final symbolic gesture of renunciation, a soft but powerful declaration that the day is complete, the effort has been enough, and there is nothing left to prove. Ritualized surrender works because the body holds emotional memory. Even when the mind understands impermanence and non-self, the body can stay tense, as if still defending itself. Bowing speaks directly to the body's language. It bypasses intellect and touches something primal. It signals the end of striving, the end of performance. The arms extend, the forehead touches the ground, and something shifts. In that moment, the body says what words cannot. I let go. In many monastic settings, practitioners bow at the start and end of each day. They bow to the Buddha, to the Dharma, to the Sangha, not to worship, but to honor what they represent. The awakened mind, the truth of the path, the support of the community. But the deeper purpose is to bow to reality itself, to meet the present moment without resistance. Before sleep, this gesture has a unique power. It frames the day not as a personal achievement, but as part of a larger unfolding. It places your individual concerns within a wider context. It reduces the sense of isolation and softens the need to carry everything alone. Anxiety often thrives on the illusion of control. The thought that you must handle everything, fix everything, make everything right before rest can come. Bowing cuts through this. It offers a moment of radical honesty. I did what I could today. Now I lay it down. The ritual does not erase problems. It does not guarantee a dreamless night, but it changes your posture toward the unknown. It allows you to meet rest not with tension, but with reverence. This kind of reverence is not religious in the dogmatic sense. It's a spiritual attitude, a respect for life as it is, a willingness to trust what cannot be planned. When bowing becomes part of your sleep preparation, you are training the body to release the accumulated tension of the day. You are retraining the emotional body to see rest not as abandonment, but as participation in something greater than the self. The practice does not require elaborate rituals. One bow is enough. Done with sincerity, it becomes a powerful closing. You can bow toward a small altar, toward a candle, or simply toward the space where you rest. You can bow in silence or with a phrase, I release today. I return to stillness. I bow to what is. The specifics matter less than the intention. What gives the gesture its power is mindfulness, being fully present with the act, allowing the body to feel the meaning behind it. Bowing also addresses pride in a very subtle way. Pride doesn't always show up as arrogance. Sometimes it's the refusal to ask for help, the insistence on holding everything together, the fear of appearing vulnerable. These postures create inner stiffness. They keep the nervous system in alert mode. Bowing gently dismantles this armor. It invites humility, not humiliation, but softness. It allows you to say, I cannot do this alone. I am part of something vast. And this softening is exactly what opens the door to deeper rest. Many people carry emotional weight into sleep, not just from the day's events, but from long-standing habits of self-judgment. The voice that says, you should have done more. You didn't handle that well. You failed again. These thoughts, left unchecked, shape the quality of rest. Bowing does not argue with them. It silences them through truth. It does not say, I was perfect. It says, I surrender my need to be perfect. In that moment, shame loses its grip. You return to something more honest, your humanity. Over time, the body begins to associate bowing with relief. It becomes a symbol not of effort, but of return. Just as the breath becomes a refuge in meditation, the bow becomes a signal to the subconscious that it is safe to let go. This repatterns the way you enter sleep. Instead of falling into it, you arrive with dignity, with awareness, with peace. In some traditions, bowing is followed by a short period of stillness, After the gesture, the practitioner sits or lies down with the feeling it creates. This stillness is important. It allows the effects of the bow to settle. It deepens the transition. The body shifts from activity to receptivity, from doing to being, and this state of receptivity is where real rest begins. The beauty of ritual is that it holds space for you even when the mind is tired, even if your day was chaotic, even if your thoughts are scattered. The act of bowing brings you back. It does not require explanation. It speaks a truth the heart understands, that you are not in control of everything, that you are not defined by your thoughts, that rest is not earned, it is your birthright. As you continue this practice, it may evolve. You might add a short reflection. You might include a name or memory in your heart. You might use bowing to forgive yourself, to release another, to mark a transition. But at its core, the ritual remains the same. A full-bodied reminder that surrender is not weakness, it is wisdom. And as the body bows, the mind follows. The breath slows. The chest opens. The face softens. Sleep becomes not a goal, but a natural unfolding. Not a task to complete, but a space to enter. And each night, the gesture becomes more familiar, more sacred, more your own. This is the power of bowing. It cuts through mental complexity with physical truth. It brings the body into alignment with the heart's deepest knowing. It turns sleep into a sacred act, not because the form is magical, but because the intention is clear: to let go, to release the day, to rest in what cannot be grasped, to bow fully into peace.